I'll take her.
Those three words cut through the church, like a knife through silence. Everyone turned to stare, not at the groom, but at the little girl standing on the pew, fists clenched, eyes blazing with protective fury. Marla Hensley stood frozen at the altar in a wedding dress 2 sizes too small, feeling every cruel whisper like a physical blow. She was 24 years old, unwanted, and about to marry a stranger just to survive the winter. But when that child defended her, when Cole Bennett's daughter looked at her like she mattered, everything changed. This is their story. Hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this journey takes us. The dress didn't fit. Marla could feel it pulling across her shoulders, tight around her ribs, the fabric straining with every breath she took. Someone had donated it, probably Mrs. Fletcher, who'd looked her up and down outside the general store 3 days ago, with that particular expression wealthy women wore when they wanted credit for charity without actually being kind. The dress was cream-colored, or it had been once. Now it looked more like the color of old teeth, with lace that had yellowed at the edges, and a hem that dragged against the wooden floor of Black Hollow Ridge's only church. Marla gathered the excess fabric in her fist as she walked, trying not to trip, trying not to think about the faces turning toward her. She could hear them, not the words exactly. People in small towns had learned to whisper skillfully. But the tone. That particular combination of pity and contempt that Marla had been hearing her entire life. Too plain, too heavy, too desperate, too poor, too much of everything except the things that mattered. The church smelled like pine and candle wax and judgment. Her uncle sat in the 3rd row, arms crossed, face impatient. He'd made his position clear 2 weeks ago when she'd turned 24 without a husband, and his wife had started making pointed comments about extra mouths to feed. "Find somewhere else, or find yourself in the snow," he'd said. Not cruel exactly, just practical. That's how people were out here. Winter didn't care about your feelings, so why should anyone else? Cole Bennett stood at the altar. He wasn't looking at her. Marla had met him exactly twice before today. Once, when Thomas Grayson, the town's unofficial matchmaker for desperate situations, had brought her to the ranch to see if it would suit. Cole had nodded, asked if she could cook and clean and help with his daughter, and that had been that. The second time was yesterday, signing papers in the lawyer's office. Cole had worn the same expression both times, blank, distant, like he was buying livestock instead of taking a wife. He was tall. That was the first thing anyone noticed about Cole Bennett. Tall and broad-shouldered, with the kind of build that came from years of physical labor. His hair was dark, touched with gray at the temples, even though he couldn't be much past 30. His face was weathered, lined around the eyes and mouth in ways that made him look older than he probably was. He wasn't looking at her now either. Marla forced herself to keep walking. The aisle felt impossibly long. Every step seemed to echo, broadcasting her presence, her desperation, her complete and total lack of better options. She kept her eyes forward, chin up, trying to hold on to whatever dignity she had left. Someone coughed. It sounded like laughter disguised as a cough. "Poor thing," a woman whispered, not quietly enough. "He must be desperate," another voice agreed. "Well, she's desperate too, isn't she? Nobody else would have her." Marla's fingers tightened in the fabric of the dress. Her face burned. She wanted to run. She wanted to disappear. She wanted to be anywhere except here, in this church, wearing this terrible dress, walking toward a man who couldn't even pretend to want her. But where would she go? The mountains surrounded Black Hollow Ridge like walls, beautiful and merciless. Winter was coming. Everyone could feel it in the air, smell it in the smoke from chimneys, see it in the way animals were already growing thicker coats. Winter here wasn't just cold. It was survival. And Marla had no survival skills, no money, no family who wanted her. So she kept walking. Cole's daughter sat in the front pew. Ellie Bennett was 7 years old, small for her age, with dark hair pulled into 2 careful braids, and eyes that seemed too serious for a child. She wore a blue dress that someone had obviously made for her with love. The stitching was perfect, the fabric good quality. Probably her mother's work, before the fire. Everyone in Black Hollow Ridge knew about the fire. How Cole's wife, Sarah, had died in the barn 18 months ago, trying to save the horses. How Cole had barely spoken since, had turned from a quiet man into something harder, colder. How little Ellie had nightmares that woke the whole ranch. The girl was watching Marla now, with an expression Marla couldn't read. Marla tried to smile at her. It felt wrong on her face, forced. Ellie didn't smile back. 5 more steps. Honestly, what was he thinking? The whisper came from somewhere behind Marla. Maybe he wasn't thinking at all. Maybe he just needed someone to cook. Could have hired a cook without marrying one. Maybe nobody would work for him. You know how he is now, cold as the mountains. 4 steps. Marla's hands were shaking. She clasped them together in front of her, holding the ugly bouquet that Thomas had put together this morning. Wildflowers, already wilting, tied with a ribbon that didn't match the dress. Nothing matched. Nothing fit. She was a collection of wrong things trying to pass as something acceptable. 3 steps. Cole still wasn't looking at her. He was staring at something over her head, his jaw tight, his hands hanging at his sides. He wore a clean shirt and dark pants, his boots polished. He'd made an effort with his appearance at least, even if he couldn't make an effort to pretend this meant something. 2 steps. She's bigger than I thought, someone whispered. Probably eats more than she's worth. Hope he's got enough food stored for winter. The laughter was quiet but unmistakable. Marla stumbled, just slightly. Her foot caught in the hem of the too long dress. She recovered quickly, but not before several people noticed. The laughter grew a little louder. 1 step. She reached the altar. The preacher, a thin man with kind eyes and a practiced smile, nodded at her encouragingly. Cole didn't move, didn't acknowledge her. Just kept staring at that spot above everyone's heads like he was somewhere else entirely. Marla stood beside him, close enough that she could smell wood smoke and leather and something else, something clean like soap. Close enough that she could see his hands were scarred, the knuckles rough, the fingers long and strong. He still didn't look at her. The preacher opened his Bible. "Dearly beloved," he began. Someone in the back giggled. Marla's throat tightened. She focused on breathing, in and out. Don't cry. Don't give them that. Whatever else happened, whatever humiliation she had to endure, she wouldn't cry in front of these people. "We are gathered here today." "Look at her face," a woman whispered, "trying so hard not to cry." "I'd cry too if I was that desperate." At least she found someone. That's more than most girls like her can say. The words hit like stones, each one precise and painful. Marla stood perfectly still, her bouquet trembling in her hands, her eyes fixed on the wall behind the preacher where someone had hung a cross. Cole's jaw tightened, but he didn't move. "To join together this man and this woman in holy matrimony," the preacher continued, his voice steady and professional. He'd done this before. He knew how to ignore the whispers, the judgment, the cruelty that small towns dressed up as community. Marla wondered if he pitied her too. "Marriage is not to be entered into lightly," the preacher said. Someone snorted. Marla's vision blurred. She blinked hard, forcing the tears back. Her face felt hot. Her hands felt cold. The dress was suffocating her, pulling tight across her chest, reminding her with every breath that she didn't fit, didn't belong, wasn't wanted. But reverently, discreetly, advisedly. "This is painful to watch," a man muttered. "Should have eloped," his companion agreed. "Saved everyone the trouble." "And soberly," the preacher finished. The door at the back of the church creaked. Someone had stood up. Marla heard footsteps, quiet, deliberate. Someone leaving. Couldn't even stay for the whole ceremony. Couldn't bear to watch the unwanted girl marry the grief-stricken widower in their loveless arrangement. More footsteps. Another person leaving. Marla's hands shook harder. "If any person can show just cause why they may not be joined together," the preacher said, his voice gentle now, almost apologetic, "let them speak now or forever hold their peace." Silence. Then, "They shouldn't get married." The voice was small but clear, childish but absolutely certain. Everyone turned. Ellie Bennett was standing on the pew, her small hands clenched into fists at her sides, her face fierce with an anger that seemed too big for her 7-year-old body. "Ellie," Cole's voice was sharp, surprised. But the girl ignored him. She was staring at the congregation, at all the adults in their fine clothes with their cruel whispers and their practiced smiles. "You're all being mean," Ellie said. Her voice shook slightly, but she didn't back down. "You're all saying terrible things about her, and she can hear you, and it's mean, and you should stop." The church went absolutely silent. Marla couldn't breathe. She stared at the little girl, this child who barely knew her, who had no reason to defend her, standing there like a tiny warrior facing down an army. "Ellie, sit down," Cole said, but his voice had lost its edge. "No." Ellie's chin lifted. "They're being mean to her. She's nice. She came to the ranch and she was nice to me, and she didn't have to be. She smiled even though she looked sad, and she's pretty." "Ellie." "She is!" Ellie's voice rose, fierce and protective. "She has kind eyes and a nice smile, and just because she doesn't look like Mrs. Fletcher or Mrs. Donovan doesn't mean she's not pretty. And you're all being mean about her dress and her face and everything else, and it's wrong." Tears were streaming down the child's face now, but she didn't stop. "My mama died," Ellie said, her voice breaking. "She died and it was awful, and Papa's been so sad, and I've been so sad, and Miss Marla came and she was kind, and maybe she could make things better, but you're all being so mean that maybe she'll leave, and then we'll be alone again, and I don't want to be alone anymore." The last words came out as a sob. The silence that followed was deafening. Marla's vision blurred completely. She couldn't see anything except the small figure of Ellie Bennett, standing on that pew, defending a stranger because it was the right thing to do. Cole moved suddenly. He stepped down from the altar and walked to his daughter, his long strides eating up the distance. For a moment, Marla thought he was angry. His face was hard, his movements sharp, but when he reached Ellie, he just lifted her off the pew and held her against his chest. The little girl buried her face in his shoulder and sobbed. Cole turned back toward the congregation. His face was still hard, but something had changed in his eyes. Something cold and furious. "My daughter's right," he said. His voice was quiet, but it carried through the church like thunder. "You are being mean. You're being cruel to a woman who's done nothing except try to survive in a town that's made it clear she's not welcome. You're sitting in this church pretending to be decent people while you tear someone apart for entertainment." He paused. His hand rubbed Ellie's back absently, comforting the crying child. "Anyone who can't show respect can leave now," Cole said. "Because if you stay, you're going to watch me marry this woman, and you're going to keep your mouths shut while you do it." Nobody moved. Cole's eyes swept the room, cold and challenging. "Go on, then. Door's right there. If you can't be decent, leave." For a long moment, nobody breathed. Then Mrs. Fletcher stood up. She gathered her skirts with a sniff, her face pinched with offense, and marched toward the door. Her husband followed, looking uncomfortable. 2 more people stood. Then 3 more. In the end, about half the congregation filed out, their footsteps loud in the silence, their faces showing varying degrees of embarrassment, anger, and wounded pride. The door closed behind the last of them. Cole stood there holding his daughter, staring at the people who remained. They were mostly older folks, a few young families, Thomas Grayson in the back with his arms crossed, and an approving nod on his face. "Anyone else?" Cole asked. Nobody moved. "Good." Cole carried Ellie back to the front pew and set her down gently. He crouched in front of her, his big hands on her small shoulders. "You did good, sweetheart," he said quietly. "You did real good." Ellie sniffled. "Is Miss Marla still going to marry you?" For the first time, Cole turned and looked at Marla. Really looked at her. His eyes met hers, and Marla saw something she hadn't expected. Not love. She hadn't been foolish enough to hope for that. But not complete indifference either. There was surprise there. Maybe even a hint of respect. "That's up to her," Cole said, still holding Marla's gaze. Marla stood frozen. Her face was wet with tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. The bouquet was crushed in her hands. The ugly dress was still too tight, still too small. Nothing had changed about her situation, except a little girl had defended her, had called her pretty and kind, had stood up to a church full of adults because she thought it was wrong to be cruel. And a man who'd barely looked at her before was looking at her now like she was an actual person instead of a solution to a problem. It wasn't love. It wasn't even close to love. But it was something. "I'm still here," Marla said. Her voice came out rough, thick with emotion. "If you're still willing." Cole stood slowly. He walked back to the altar, back to his place beside her. This time when he stopped, he was closer, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. "I'm willing," he said. The preacher cleared his throat. He looked shaken but determined. "Shall we continue?" Cole nodded. Marla nodded too. "All right then." The preacher found his place in the Bible. His hands were trembling slightly. Cole Bennett, do you take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Cole's voice was steady. I do. Marla Hensley, do you take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband, to have and to hold from this day forward, for better or worse, for richer or poorer, in sickness and in health, until death do you part? Marla looked at Cole, at his weathered face and tired eyes, and the set of his jaw that spoke of a man who'd survived things that should have broken him. I do, she whispered. The rings? Thomas stood and brought forward 2 simple gold bands. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, but they were new, and they were real. And when Cole slipped one onto Marla's finger, his hand was steady. When Marla put the other ring on Cole's finger, her hand shook so badly she almost dropped it, but she managed. Barely. By the power vested in me, the preacher said, I now pronounce you husband and wife. He paused, looked at Cole with something like sympathy. You may kiss the bride. Cole hesitated. Marla could see the conflict in his face. This wasn't what either of them wanted. This was survival, pure and simple. A transaction, an arrangement. But Ellie was watching from the front pew with hopeful eyes. Cole leaned down and pressed his lips to Marla's forehead. Brief, gentle, chaste. It wasn't a real kiss, but it was something. When he pulled back, Ellie started clapping. The sound was loud in the half-empty church. A few other people joined in, polite applause that faded quickly. It was done. Marla Hensley was now Marla Bennett. She had a husband who didn't love her, and a stepdaughter she barely knew, and a life waiting on a ranch she'd only seen once. She had a last name that meant something in this town, and a roof that wouldn't disappear when winter came. It should have felt like victory. Instead, it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down into darkness, with no idea what waited at the bottom. The ranch was 14 miles from town, up a road that got progressively worse as they traveled. Cole drove the wagon in silence, his hands steady on the reins, his eyes on the path ahead. Ellie sat between them, occasionally glancing at Marla with an expression that seemed equal parts curiosity and anxiety. Marla kept her hands folded in her lap and tried not to think about the looks on people's faces as they'd left the church. Tried not to remember the whispers or the laughter or the way Mrs. Fletcher had sniffed like Marla was something unpleasant she'd stepped in. Tried not to think about what came next. The mountains rose around them, massive and indifferent. Snow already capped the highest peaks, white against gray stone. The trees were starting to turn, aspens going gold, their leaves trembling in the wind. It was beautiful in a harsh sort of way, beautiful and completely uncaring whether anyone survived it. That's our land, Cole said suddenly, breaking the silence. He pointed to the left, where fence posts marched along the road, separating pasture from wilderness. How much land? Marla asked. 500 acres. Most of it's grazing land, some timber. The house is about 2 miles up. His voice was neutral, informative. The voice of someone giving a tour, not someone who'd just gotten married. Marla nodded like this meant something to her. Like she knew what 500 acres looked like, or what you did with grazing land. She'd grown up in town, in a house barely bigger than a shed, helping her aunt with laundry and mending. She knew nothing about ranches. Do you have cows? Ellie asked quietly. Some, Cole said. Mostly horses. Cattle are harder in the mountains. Oh. Silence fell again. The road got rougher. The wagon bounced over ruts and rocks, jostling them together. Every time Marla's shoulder bumped against Cole's, she tensed, hyper-aware of the contact. He didn't seem to notice. Finally, the house came into view. It was smaller than Marla had expected, but bigger than she'd feared. A single-story cabin made of logs with a steep roof designed to shed snow. Smoke rose from the chimney. Someone must have started a fire before they left for town. There was a barn nearby, large and sturdy-looking, and several smaller outbuildings scattered around the property. It looked lonely out here, isolated. The nearest neighbor was probably miles away. It looked like the kind of place where you could scream and nobody would hear. Home, Cole said. He pulled the wagon to a stop in front of the cabin and jumped down. He didn't help Marla down, just started unhitching the horses like she wasn't there. Ellie climbed down carefully, her blue dress bunching around her legs. She stood there looking uncertain, glancing between Marla and her father. Marla gathered her skirts and managed to get herself down without falling. The ugly wedding dress caught on the wagon wheel, and she heard something rip. She didn't bother looking to see how bad it was. "I'll show you inside," Ellie said suddenly. The little girl's voice was tentative, almost shy. She held out her hand, and after a moment Marla took it. Ellie's hand was small and warm and slightly sticky like most children's hands were. They walked to the cabin together while Cole dealt with the horses. Inside, the cabin was dim and cool. One large main room served as kitchen, dining area, and living space. A stone fireplace dominated one wall, with a fire already crackling. There were 2 doors leading off the main room, bedrooms, presumably. The furniture was simple but well made. A wooden table with 4 chairs, a couple of rocking chairs near the fireplace. Shelves lined with books and dishes and various practical items. Everything was neat, organized, but there was a spareness to it, like someone had removed anything unnecessary or beautiful or personal. "That's Papa's room," Ellie said, pointing to one door. "That was Mama's sewing room, but Papa says it's yours now." She pointed to the other door. Marla's stomach tightened. Separate rooms. Of course, this wasn't a real marriage. Cole had made that clear from the start. She was here to cook and clean and help with Ellie, nothing more. She should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt a strange, hollow disappointment that she didn't want to examine too closely. "Do you want to see it?" Ellie asked. "All right." The room was small. A narrow bed, a dresser, a window that looked out at the mountains. There was a trunk at the foot of the bed and a small mirror on the wall. Someone, probably Cole, had put fresh linens on the bed and a new pitcher and basin on the dresser. It was more than Marla had expected, more than she'd had at her uncle's house, where she'd slept on a cot in the kitchen. "Papa put flowers in there yesterday," Ellie said, pointing to a small vase on the dresser that held a few wildflowers. "He said—" She stopped, biting her lip. "What did he say?" "He said we should try to make you feel welcome, since you were doing us a favor." A favor, that's what she was. A favor that required payment in the form of shelter and food. "That was kind of him," Marla said quietly. "Are you really going to stay?" Ellie's voice was small, worried. Marla looked down at the little girl, at her serious eyes and hopeful expression, and the way she held herself like someone who'd learned not to count on anything. "Yes," Marla said, "I'm really going to stay. Promise?" "Promise." Ellie's face brightened. Then, before Marla could react, the little girl threw her arms around Marla's waist and hugged her tight. Marla stood there, frozen, her hands hovering uncertainly. She wasn't used to being touched, wasn't used to being wanted in any way. Slowly, carefully, she put her arms around Ellie and hugged her back. The child felt impossibly small, impossibly fragile. "Thank you for what you did at the church," Marla whispered. Ellie pulled back and looked up at her. "They were being mean." "They were, but you didn't have to defend me." "Yes, I did." Ellie's voice was firm, certain. "That's what you do when people are being mean to someone who doesn't deserve it. You stand up for them." Marla's throat tightened. "Who taught you that?" "Mama." Ellie's eyes filled with tears. "Mama said you always stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves, even if it's hard, even if it's scary. Your mama sounds like she was a good person." "She was." Ellie wiped at her eyes. "Papa doesn't talk about her much anymore. He gets sad." The door to the cabin opened. Heavy footsteps crossed the main room. "Ellie," Cole's voice called, "let Marla get settled." "Okay, Papa." Ellie gave Marla one more quick hug and then ran out of the room, her feet pattering against the wooden floor. Marla stood alone in her new room, listening to the muffled sounds of Cole and Ellie talking in the other room. She couldn't make out the words, but Cole's voice was gentler when he talked to his daughter, almost warm. She looked down at her hands, at the thin gold band on her finger, at the calluses she'd developed from years of work that never seemed to be enough. This was her life now. She'd married a stranger to avoid freezing to death. She'd gained a stepdaughter who barely knew her and a husband who couldn't bear to look at her. She was standing in a cabin in the middle of nowhere, wearing a torn dress that had never fit, holding on to a promise she wasn't sure she could keep. It should have felt like the end of something. Instead, as Marla took off the ugly wedding dress and hung it carefully in the small wardrobe, as she changed into one of her worn everyday dresses and pinned her hair back, as she squared her shoulders and prepared to walk out into that main room and start figuring out how to survive this. It felt more like a beginning. Dinner was a tense, quiet affair. Marla had found the kitchen area easily enough. It was well organized, with everything labeled and stored sensibly. Cole had clearly been managing on his own for a while. She'd made stew from the ingredients she found: potatoes, carrots, some salted beef, herbs she didn't recognize but hoped were edible. It was edible. Barely. She wasn't a great cook despite what she'd implied when Cole asked if she could manage a kitchen. They ate at the wooden table. Cole at one end, Marla at the other, Ellie between them. The only sounds were spoons scraping bowls and the crackle of the fire. "It's good," Ellie said politely. Marla managed a smile. "You don't have to lie." "It's fine," Cole said, his first words since they'd sat down. "I'll get better," Marla said. "At cooking, I mean. I just need practice." Cole nodded. He didn't look at her. More silence. Marla pushed food around her bowl, her appetite gone. This was going to be her life. Awkward meals in silence. A husband who wouldn't look at her, trying to be useful enough to justify her existence. "Papa," Ellie said suddenly, "can I show Marla the kittens tomorrow?" Cole glanced up. "If she wants to see them." "I'd like that," Marla said. Ellie brightened. "There are 5 of them. They live in the barn. Mama cat is gray and the kittens are all different colors. One of them has white paws like it's wearing socks." "That sounds sweet." "They're trying to learn to hunt, but they're not very good yet. Yesterday, one of them tried to catch a chicken, and the chicken chased him instead." Despite everything, Marla smiled. "That must have been funny." "It was," Ellie giggled. "The kitten ran all the way back to the barn and hid under the hay." "Ellie," Cole said, "finish your dinner." "Yes, Papa." The child ate a few more bites, then asked to be excused. Cole nodded, and Ellie carried her bowl to the wash basin before disappearing into what Marla assumed was her bedroom, leaving Marla and Cole alone. The silence was heavier now, more awkward. Marla finished her stew even though it tasted like paste in her mouth. She stood and started gathering the dishes. "I'll wash these," she said. "There's a pump outside," Cole said. "Water's cold, but it's clean." "All right." She carried the dishes outside, grateful for the excuse to leave. The evening air was cool, sharp, with the promise of the coming winter. The sky was turning purple, stars already starting to appear. It was beautiful out here, she had to admit. Beautiful in a way that made you feel small. The pump was near the cabin. Marla worked the handle until water gushed out, so cold it made her hands ache. She washed the dishes mechanically, her mind elsewhere. What was she doing here? What had she agreed to? She was married to a man who didn't want her, in a place where she didn't belong, pretending she knew how to be a wife and mother when she barely knew how to take care of herself. The panic hit suddenly, sharp and overwhelming. Her hands started shaking. The bowl she was holding slipped and hit the ground, cracking but not breaking. "You all right?" Cole's voice came from behind her. Marla jumped, nearly dropping another dish. "Fine," she managed, "just clumsy." He walked over, his boots crunching on the gravel. He picked up the cracked bowl and examined it in the fading light. "Still usable," he said. "I'm sorry." "It's a bowl, Marla. It doesn't matter." It was the first time he'd said her name since the ceremony. It sounded strange in his rough voice. Not bad, exactly, just unfamiliar. "I'll be more careful," she said. "You're shaking." "I'm cold." It was a lie. He probably knew it was a lie, but he didn't call her on it. Instead, he took the dishes from her hands and set them aside. Then he shrugged out of his coat and held it out. "Here." Marla stared at the coat, at the gesture. "I don't need—" "Take it." His voice was firm but not unkind. "You'll freeze out here." She took the coat. It was still warm from his body, and it smelled like wood smoke and leather and horses. She pulled it around her shoulders, and it was so big it almost swallowed her. Cole went back to the pump and finished washing the dishes himself. His movements were efficient, practiced. He'd clearly been doing this for a while. "You don't have to do that," Marla said. "Neither do you. Not tonight. You've had a long day." That was an understatement. "I want to help," Marla said. "That's why I'm here, isn't it? To help." Cole paused, his hands still in the water. For a moment she thought he might argue, but he just said, "Tomorrow's soon enough." He finished the dishes and carried them back inside. Marla followed, still wrapped in his coat. Inside, Ellie was already in bed. Marla could hear the little girl singing softly to herself through the thin wall, some lullaby that was probably one her mother used to sing. Cole stood in the middle of the main room, looking uncertain. It was the first time Marla had seen him look anything other than completely sure of himself. "I sleep in the loft," he said, gesturing to a ladder in the corner that led up to a space above the kitchen area. "You've got your room. Ellie's in the other one. If you need anything—" He stopped, started again. "If there's an emergency, just call. I'll hear you." "All right." "We get up early here, before sunrise. There's chores that can't wait. I'll be ready. You don't have to—" He stopped himself. "Never mind. Get some rest." He turned toward the ladder. "Cole?" He stopped, looked back at her. Marla's mind went blank. She'd called his name without knowing what she wanted to say. "Thank you. I'm sorry. I'll try not to be a burden." "Your coat," she finally said. "Keep it tonight. It gets cold." Before she could respond, he climbed the ladder to the loft, his movements easy and practiced. She heard him moving around up there, heard the creak of a bed frame. Then silence. Marla stood in the middle of the main room, wrapped in her husband's coat, listening to Ellie's lullaby and the crackle of the dying fire. She'd survived the day, the wedding, the whispers, the cruel laughter. She'd survived meeting her new family and cooking her first meal and having her first awkward conversations with a man who was legally her husband, but might as well have been a stranger. She was still here, still standing. Tomorrow, she'd figure out the rest. Marla went to her small room and closed the door. She hung Cole's coat carefully on a peg and changed into her nightgown, a thin, worn thing that had been mended too many times to count. The bed was harder than she'd expected, but cleaner than anywhere she'd slept in years. She lay there in the darkness, listening to the sounds of the cabin settling, the wind picking up outside, an owl calling in the distance. She touched the ring on her finger, turned it slowly. Mrs. Bennet. It didn't feel real yet. Maybe it never would. But as Marla closed her eyes and felt exhaustion pulling her toward sleep, she made herself a promise. She would try. She would do her best to be useful, to help Cole and Ellie, to earn her place here. She would survive this winter, and maybe, if she was very lucky, she'd find a way to do more than just survive. Maybe she'd find a way to belong. The rooster woke Marla at 4:30 in the morning, its crow cutting through her dreams like a blade through fabric. She jolted upright in the narrow bed, disoriented, her heart hammering. For a confused moment, she didn't know where she was. The room was too dark, too cold, too unfamiliar. Then she remembered. The ranch, Cole, Ellie. The wedding that felt more like a business transaction. She was married now. This was her life. Marla forced herself out of bed, her feet hitting the cold wooden floor. She'd slept in her worn nightgown, and now she scrambled to pull on her dress in the darkness, her fingers clumsy with cold and nerves. Outside she could hear movement, boots on wood, the creak of the cabin door opening and closing. Cole was already up. She pinned her hair back hastily and emerged from her room to find the main room empty, but the fire already rebuilt, warmth starting to spread through the space. Coffee sat on the stove, hot and bitter-smelling. Through the window she could see a lantern moving in the barn. Marla poured herself a coffee with shaking hands and stood by the fire, trying to wake up properly. She'd never been good at early mornings. At her uncle's house, she'd been able to sleep until 6, sometimes later if there wasn't much work. This was different. This was ranch life. The door opened and Cole came in, carrying a pail of milk. He stopped when he saw her, surprise flickering across his face. "You're up?" he said. "You said early. Didn't expect you to manage it the first day." There was something that might have been approval in his voice. Or maybe she was imagining it. "I'll do better tomorrow," Marla said. "I'll get up when you do." Cole set the milk down and went to wash his hands in the basin. "You don't have to. Ellie usually sleeps until 6. You could too." "I want to help." He dried his hands on a towel, not looking at her. "Suit yourself." They stood there in awkward silence, both holding coffee cups, both staring at different parts of the room. "I should start breakfast," Marla said finally. "Eggs are in the coop, bacon's in the cold room out back, bread's in that box." He pointed to a wooden container on the counter. "All right." Marla set down her coffee and went to find the eggs. The chicken coop was attached to the barn, a small structure that smelled like hay and birds and manure. The chickens clucked irritably when she entered, disturbed by the intrusion. She'd collected eggs before at her uncle's place, but these hens seemed more aggressive, pecking at her hands when she reached into the nesting boxes. "Back off," she muttered, pulling out eggs as quickly as she could. She managed to get 6 without breaking any, which felt like a victory. The cold room was exactly that. A small shed built into the north side of the cabin where the sun never reached. Slabs of bacon hung from hooks, along with some salted beef and what looked like a deer haunch. Marla cut several thick slices of bacon, her hands already numb from the cold. Back inside, Cole had disappeared again. Marla heard hammering coming from somewhere outside. She set about making breakfast, determined to do better than last night's disaster of a stew. The bacon sizzled in the pan. The eggs cracked clean. The bread was good quality, probably from town. Marla worked methodically, trying to remember everything her aunt had taught her about cooking before deciding Marla was hopeless at it. By the time Ellie emerged from her room, rubbing sleep from her eyes, Marla had breakfast laid out on the table. "It smells good," Ellie said, climbing into her chair. "Let's hope it tastes good too." "Papa says you're not supposed to say bad things about your own cooking. He says it makes people not want to eat it." Marla smiled despite herself. "Your papa's probably right. He's right about most things, except when he says I need to go to bed early. That's not right." "I think that might be very right, actually." Ellie wrinkled her nose but didn't argue. She was wearing a simple dress today, her hair still in the braids from yesterday, though they were coming loose. "Want me to fix your hair?" Marla asked. Ellie's face lit up. "You know how to braid?" "I do." "Papa tries, but he's not very good. The braids always fall out." After breakfast, Marla sat Ellie down and carefully undid the old braids, combing through the tangles with her fingers. The little girl's hair was thick and dark, like her father's, with a slight wave to it. "Your mama had pretty hair too, I bet," Marla said softly. "Uh-huh. Papa says I look like her, except my eyes. My eyes are like his." Marla began braiding, her fingers working automatically. "Do you remember her well?" "Some things. I remember she smelled like bread and flowers, and she sang all the time. Even when she was working, she was singing." Ellie was quiet for a moment. "I'm forgetting her voice, though. I try to remember, but it keeps getting harder." Marla's throat tightened. "I'm sorry, sweetheart." "It's okay. Papa says that's normal. He says we keep the love even when we can't remember everything else." The door opened and Cole came in, stopping short when he saw them. His eyes went to Ellie's hair, half braided, Marla's hands still working. "Marla's fixing my braids," Ellie announced. "She's really good at it." Cole's expression was unreadable. "That's kind of her." He moved to the stove and poured himself more coffee. Marla finished the braids and tied them off with the ribbons Ellie handed her. "There, all done." Ellie ran to the small mirror by the door and examined herself. "They're perfect. Papa, look." "I see. Very nice." Cole's voice was carefully neutral. "Can you teach Papa how to do it?" Ellie asked Marla. "So he can make them when you're not here?" An odd silence fell. The words hung there, "when you're not here," reminding all of them that this arrangement was new, uncertain, potentially temporary, despite the vows they'd spoken. "I'm not going anywhere," Marla said quietly. Cole glanced at her over his coffee cup. Their eyes met for a second before he looked away. "Ellie, go feed the cats," he said. "They're probably hungry." "Okay." Ellie grabbed a small pail and skipped out the door, braids bouncing, leaving Marla and Cole alone again. "You don't have to make promises to her," Cole said after a moment. His voice was low, rough. "About staying." "Why not?" "I meant what I said in the church. Things change. Winter gets hard. This life gets hard. You might—" He stopped himself. "Might what? Leave?" Marla set down the comb she'd been holding. "You think I'd do that to her? Get her hopes up, and then just disappear?" "I don't know what you'd do. I barely know you." It was true. It stung anyway. "Then let me tell you something about me," Marla said, anger creeping into her voice. "I don't make promises I don't intend to keep. I told Ellie I'd stay, and I meant it. I'm here for the winter. I'm here for however long this arrangement lasts. I won't just vanish on that little girl." Cole studied her for a long moment. All right. I believe you." He set down his cup. "I've got fence work up in the north pasture. Be gone most of the day. There's mending that needs doing if you're looking for something to keep busy." "I can do that." He nodded and headed for the door, then paused with his hand on the frame. The braids did look nice, he said without turning around. She was happy. Then he was gone, his boots crunching across the yard toward the barn. Marla stood there feeling oddly off balance. It wasn't much, barely a compliment, really. But coming from Cole, who seemed to measure his words like they cost money, it felt like something. The morning passed in domestic tasks that Marla found surprisingly satisfying. She washed dishes and swept floors and found the mending pile Cole had mentioned. It was enormous, shirts and pants and socks all needing attention. She settled in one of the rocking chairs by the fire and got to work. Ellie came and went, playing with the kittens, helping gather more eggs, chattering about everything and nothing. The child seemed desperate for conversation, for attention, for connection. How long had she been out here with only her grieving father for company? "Do you want to learn to sew?" Marla asked when Ellie came in for the third time. "Mama was teaching me before she died," Ellie said quietly. "But Papa doesn't know how, so we stopped." "Well, I'm not as good as your mama probably was, but I can show you what I know." They sat together for an hour, Marla teaching Ellie basic stitches on a scrap of fabric. The girl was a quick learner, her small fingers surprisingly deft. She was concentrating so hard her tongue stuck out slightly between her teeth. "You're doing really well," Marla said. Really, your mama would be proud." Ellie's face crumpled slightly. For a moment Marla thought she might cry, but the girl just took a deep breath and kept sewing. "I miss her," Ellie whispered. "I know you do, honey." "Do you miss your mama?" Marla paused, needle in midair. "I never knew my mama. She died when I was born." "That's sad." "It is. But you can't miss what you never had, I suppose." "I think you can," Ellie said with the unexpected wisdom of children. "I think you can miss having a mama, even if you never knew yours." Marla's vision blurred. She blinked hard, focusing on her stitching. "Maybe you're right." They worked in companionable silence after that, the only sounds the crackle of the fire and the occasional cluck of chickens outside. Around midday, Marla made sandwiches and walked out to find Cole. She followed the fence line north like he'd mentioned, carrying a basket with food and water. The day had warmed up slightly, the sun breaking through clouds, making the mountains look almost inviting instead of threatening. She found him a half-mile from the cabin, working on a section of fence that had clearly seen better days. His shirt was off despite the cool air, his skin slick with sweat. Marla tried not to stare at the muscles in his back and shoulders, the scars that crossed his skin in pale lines. "Brought you lunch," she called out. Cole straightened, reaching for his shirt. He pulled it on quickly, almost like he was embarrassed to be caught without it. "Didn't have to do that." "I know, but you have to eat." He wiped his hands on his pants and took the sandwich she offered. They sat on opposite ends of a fallen log, eating in silence. "Fence is in bad shape," Cole said finally. "Can you fix it?" "Most of it. Some sections need to be completely replaced. Won't happen before winter, though." "Will that be a problem?" "Depends on the snow. If it gets bad enough, the fence won't matter much anyway. Horses won't wander in a blizzard." Marla watched him eat. He had good hands, she noticed. Strong, but not clumsy. The kind of hands that could do delicate work when needed. "Ellie and I worked on mending," she said. "I taught her some stitches." Cole nodded. She used to help Sarah with that kind of thing. It was the first time he'd mentioned his wife by name since Marla had arrived. "She talks about her," Marla said carefully. "Your wife. Is that okay? Or would you rather—" "It's fine." Cole's voice was tight. "She should talk about her mother. She should remember." "What about you?" "What about me?" "Do you talk about her?" Cole stood abruptly, gathering his tools. "I should get back to work. Thanks for the food. I didn't mean to pry." "You didn't." But his shoulders were tense, his movement sharp. "I'll be back before dark." Marla walked back to the cabin alone, feeling like she'd stepped on something fragile without meaning to. The afternoon passed slowly. Marla finished the mending, started stew for dinner, helped Ellie with more sewing practice. The girl was a bright spot in the day, her laughter and chatter filling the spaces that might otherwise feel empty. But Marla kept thinking about Cole. About the way he'd shut down when she mentioned his wife. About the grief that seemed to live in his bones, weighing him down. She understood loss, even if she'd never lost someone the way he had. She understood what it meant to carry pain you couldn't share. True to his word, Cole returned just as the sun was setting. He looked exhausted, his clothes dirty, his hands scraped and bleeding in places. "You're hurt," Marla said before she could stop herself. Cole glanced at his hands. "It's nothing. It's not nothing. Let me clean them." "Marla, sit down." Something in her voice made him obey. He sat at the table while Marla heated water and found clean cloth. Ellie watched from her spot by the fire, eyes wide. Marla took Cole's hand, the first time she'd really touched him since the ceremony. His palm was rough with calluses, the cuts deeper than they'd looked from a distance. She cleaned them carefully, trying to be gentle. "You should wear gloves," she said. "Lost them somewhere? I can make you new ones, if you have leather scraps." "You know how to make gloves?" "I can learn." Cole didn't pull his hand away, though she half expected him to. He just sat there, watching her work with an expression she couldn't read. "Why are you doing this?" he asked quietly. "Doing what?" "All of it. The food, the mending, this." He gestured at his bandaged hand. "You could just stay in your room, cook when you have to, do the minimum. Nobody would blame you." Marla finished wrapping the bandage and moved to his other hand. "Is that what you want? For me to do the minimum?" "I don't know what I want." It was possibly the most honest thing he'd said to her. "Well, I know what I want," Marla said. "I want to be useful. I want to earn my place here. I want Ellie to be happy and safe and to have someone who cares about her." She paused. "And I don't know how to just exist without trying to help. It's not in me." Cole's eyes met hers. Up close, she could see they were more gray than blue, with tiny flecks of darker color. There were lines around them from squinting in the sun, from years of hard living. "You're different than I expected," he said. "Good different or bad different?" "Haven't decided yet." Despite everything, Marla almost smiled. "Fair enough." She finished bandaging his hands and stepped back. Cole flexed his fingers, testing the wrapping. "Thank you," he said. "You're welcome." That night at dinner, the conversation flowed slightly easier. Ellie told her father about learning to sew, demonstrated her stitches on the practice cloth. Cole listened with what might have been pride in his eyes. "You did good work today," he told his daughter. "Marla's a good teacher." "Seems like it." After Ellie went to bed, Marla washed dishes while Cole sat by the fire, oiling his boots. The silence between them felt less oppressive than before, almost comfortable. "Storm coming," Cole said eventually. Marla looked out the window. The sky was clear, stars bright. "How can you tell?" "Feel it in the air, smell it. Animals know too. Watch the horses tomorrow. They'll be restless." "Is it going to be bad?" "Probably not. Early season storms usually aren't, but it'll be the first real snow." Marla dried the last dish and put it away. "What do we need to do to prepare?" "We?" Cole glanced at her. "We," Marla repeated firmly. Something shifted in his expression. "Extra wood needs chopping. Food brought in from the cold room. Animals secured. It's a lot of work." "Then we better start early." Cole nodded slowly. "All right then, we'll start at first light." They did. Marla woke even before the rooster, determined to prove she could handle ranch life. She dressed in the darkness, braided her hair, and emerged to find Cole already making coffee. "Morning," he said. "Morning." They worked through breakfast in efficient silence, then headed outside as dawn broke gray and cold over the mountains. Cole was right. The air did feel different. Heavy somehow. Expectant. He showed her how to chop wood properly, how to stack it so it would dry. Marla's first swings were pathetic, the axe barely biting into the log. "Put your back into it," Cole said. "Use your whole body, not just your arms." She tried again. Better, but the log still didn't split. "Here." Cole stepped behind her, his hands covering hers on the axe handle. "Like this. See the grain? Aim for the crack. Now swing. Use your hips, your shoulders, everything." They swung together, his body guiding hers, and the log split clean in two. Marla was acutely aware of how close he was standing, how warm he felt despite the cold morning, how his breath stirred her hair. "Try it yourself now," Cole said, stepping back. She did. The next log split on the second swing. "Better," Cole said, something that might have been approval in his voice. They worked for hours. Marla's hands blistered despite the gloves Cole found for her. Her back ached. Her arms felt like they might fall off. But she didn't stop. Cole noticed, though. Around midday, he called a break. "You're going to hurt yourself," he said. "I'm fine." "Marla," I said, "I'm fine." He caught her wrist as she reached for another log. Gently, but firmly. His thumb pressed against her pulse point, probably feeling how hard her heart was racing. "You don't have to prove anything," he said quietly. "Yes, I do." Marla pulled her hand back. "I have to prove I'm worth keeping around, that I can handle this life, that I'm not just—" She stopped herself. "Not just what?" "Not just the desperate girl who needed rescuing." Cole was quiet for a long moment. "Is that what you think this is? A rescue?" "Isn't it?" "No." His voice was flat, certain. "This is two people making a deal because it made sense for both of them. You needed a home. I needed help, that's all." It should have felt cold, stated like that. Instead, it felt almost respectful, honest. "All right," Marla said. "All right," Cole echoed. "Now take a break before you collapse." They sat on the porch steps, drinking water, watching Ellie play with the kittens in the yard. The child was trying to teach them to jump over a stick, with limited success. "She's happy," Cole said quietly. "I haven't seen her this happy in months." "She's a good kid." "She is." He paused. "She gets attached easy, though. When Sarah died, it nearly destroyed her. I worry about her getting attached to me and then me leaving," Marla finished. "Yeah, I told you I'm not going anywhere." "I know, but winter's long and hard and lonely. You might change your mind." Marla turned to look at him directly. "Why are you so convinced I'll leave?" Cole met her eyes. "Because everyone does, eventually. One way or another." There was so much pain in those words. So much old hurt. "I'm sorry about your wife," Marla said softly. "Don't." "Don't what?" "Don't feel sorry for me. I don't want pity." "It's not pity. It's just—" Marla searched for the right words. "It's just acknowledgement that you've been through something terrible and you're still here, still trying. That takes strength." Cole looked away. "Doesn't feel like strength most days." Before Marla could respond, the first snowflake drifted down between them. Then another. Within minutes, the sky was full of snow, fat flakes falling steadily, covering the ground in white. "Here it comes," Cole said, standing. "We need to finish up. Ellie, inside." They worked frantically for the next hour, securing animals, moving wood, making sure everything was battened down. The snow fell heavier, the wind picking up, temperature dropping fast. By the time they finally got inside, all three of them were covered in snow, shivering. "Get warm," Cole ordered. "I'll make sure the fire's good." Marla helped Ellie out of her wet clothes and into dry ones, then changed herself. Her hands were shaking so badly she could barely work the buttons. That night the storm raged outside. Wind howled around the cabin, snow piled against the windows. But inside it was warm, the fire roaring, stew bubbling on the stove. Ellie was nervous about the storm. She kept jumping at every loud gust of wind, every creak of the cabin. "It's okay, sweetheart," Marla said. "The cabin's strong. It's been through storms before." "What if it's not okay?" Ellie's voice was small. "Then your papa will keep us safe. Right, Cole?" Cole looked up from where he was checking the fire. "Right. Nothing's going to happen to you, Ellie. I promise." But as the night wore on and the storm grew worse, Ellie became more and more frightened. Finally, around midnight, Marla heard crying from the child's room. She went in without thinking, found Ellie curled up in bed, sobbing. "Hey, hey," Marla said softly, sitting on the edge of the bed. "What's wrong?" "I keep seeing it," Ellie cried. "The fire, the barn. I keep seeing Mama." "Oh, honey." Marla pulled the little girl into her arms. "It's okay. It's just a storm. There's no fire." But Ellie was beyond reason, lost in nightmare and memory. She clung to Marla, crying so hard she could barely breathe. The door opened. Cole stood there in his nightshirt, hair disheveled, eyes worried. "I heard her," he started. "She's having a nightmare about the fire," Marla said quietly. Cole's face went pale. He crossed the room in 2 strides and knelt by the bed. "Ellie, baby, look at me," he said, his voice rough with emotion. "Look at Papa." But Ellie just cried harder. Let me hold her, Cole said to Marla. Marla started to hand Ellie over, but the little girl's grip on her tightened. No, Ellie sobbed. Don't let go, please don't let go. Marla looked at Cole helplessly. His face was a mix of hurt and something else, maybe resignation. It's all right, he said quietly. You stay with her. Cole? It's fine. But his voice said it wasn't fine at all. He left the room, pulling the door closed behind him. Marla held Ellie through the storm, rocking her gently, singing songs she half remembered from her own childhood. Eventually, the child's sobs quieted to hiccups, then to steady breathing. She was asleep, but she still held on to Marla like she might disappear. Carefully, Marla lay down beside Ellie, keeping the child close. She could hear the storm outside, the wind screaming. And underneath that, from somewhere in the cabin, she thought she heard another sound, Cole trying very hard not to make noise while he cried. When morning came, the storm had passed. The world outside was transformed, covered in 2 feet of fresh snow, everything white and pristine. The sun broke through clouds, making the snow sparkle like diamonds. Marla woke to find Ellie already gone, voices in the main room. She emerged to find father and daughter at the table eating breakfast. Cole had cooked eggs and bacon and fresh bread. Morning, he said without looking at her. Morning. Marla poured herself coffee, unsure what to say about last night. The snow is so deep, Ellie announced, apparently recovered from her nightmare. Papa says we might be stuck here for days. Might be, Cole agreed. Road won't be passable until it gets cleared. How long does that usually take? Marla asked. Depends. Could be a few days, could be a week. They were stuck here, together, no escape. The thought should have been claustrophobic. Instead, Marla felt something else. Something almost like relief. After breakfast, Cole pulled on his coat. I need to check on the horses. Make sure the barn didn't take damage. I'll come with you, Marla said. You don't have to... I know, but I want to learn. How to care for the horses, check for damage, all of it. If I'm going to be here, I should know. Cole studied her for a moment, then nodded. Get your coat. They trudged through the deep snow together, Marla following in Cole's footsteps to make the walking easier. The barn was cold but intact, the horses restless but unharmed. Cole showed her how to check their hooves, how to measure out feed, how to tell if an animal was healthy or hurting. This one's Smoke, he said, running his hand down a gray mare's neck. She's the oldest, gentle, good for beginners. And that one? Marla pointed to a large black stallion. That's Midnight. He's mine. Don't try to ride him. He doesn't like strangers. What about the others? Copper's good. Star's skittish, but she'll calm down. The 2 younger ones are still in training. Marla watched him work, saw how gentle he was with the animals despite his rough hands and gruff manner. This was a different side of Cole Bennett, softer somehow. About last night, Cole said suddenly, not looking at her. With Ellie. She was scared. The storm brought back memories of the fire. I know. His hand stilled on the brush he was using on Smoke's coat. I couldn't help her. She didn't want me. She wanted you. Cole, I'm not saying that to make you feel bad. I'm just... He stopped, started again. I'm glad she had someone. That's all. I'm glad you were there. Marla moved closer, standing on the other side of the horse. She loves you. You know that, right? She was just caught up in the nightmare. Maybe. He didn't sound convinced. Do you want to talk about the fire? Marla asked gently. No. Okay. They worked in silence for a while, the only sounds the horses moving in their stalls and the occasional drip of melting snow from the roof. It was my fault, Cole said suddenly. Marla looked up. What was? The fire. Sarah dying. His voice was flat, emotionless. The voice of someone who'd told themselves this story so many times it didn't even hurt anymore, or hurt so much he'd gone numb. I'm sure that's not true. It is, though. Cole moved to the next horse, his movements mechanical. I told her not to go into the barn. The fire had already started, already spread. I told her to stay back, that it was too dangerous, but she heard the horses screaming and she went in anyway. He was quiet for a moment. When he spoke again, his voice was rough. I should have stopped her, should have grabbed her, held her back. But I hesitated, just for a second, and she was gone, into the smoke. By the time I realized she wasn't coming out, it was too late. The whole thing collapsed. Cole. Marla came around the horse, stood in front of him. That's not your fault. She made a choice. A choice I should have prevented. You can't prevent someone from being who they are. And it sounds like your wife was someone who couldn't stand by while animals suffered. She was. For the first time, something like warmth touched his voice. She was brave, stubborn, kind to a fault. Then she'd probably tell you to stop blaming yourself. Cole's laugh was bitter. Probably. Doesn't make it easier. No, Marla agreed. I don't suppose it does. They stood there in the cold barn, snow melting off their coats, their breath fogging in the air. Why are you being so nice to me? Cole asked finally. What? You. Being kind. Taking care of Ellie, trying to help. You don't have to do any of that. This was supposed to be a business arrangement. Marla considered her answer carefully. Maybe because I know what it's like to feel alone, to feel like nobody cares if you live or die. And I don't want that for you or Ellie. You felt like that? At your uncle's? Every single day. Cole's eyes met hers, really looked at her for the first time since she'd arrived. I'm sorry. Don't be. I'm here now. That's what matters. Something passed between them in that moment. Not love. It was too soon for love. But understanding, maybe. Recognition. Two broken people trying to figure out how to be less broken. We should get back, Cole said. Ellie will worry. They walked back to the cabin through the sparkling snow, closer together than they'd been on the way out. The days that followed the first snow fell into a rhythm that surprised Marla with its strange comfort. She woke before dawn, made coffee alongside Cole in a silence that had become companionable rather than awkward. They worked together, feeding animals, chopping wood, maintaining the ranch against the creeping cold. Ellie orbited between them like a small moon, chattering and laughing, slowly becoming the child she must have been before grief changed everything. But 3 weeks into this new life, everything shifted again. Marla was bringing in laundry from the line when she saw him, a figure stumbling through the snow toward the ranch, moving erratically like he might collapse at any moment. She dropped the basket and ran inside. Cole, there's someone coming. Something's wrong. Cole was at the door in seconds, rifle in hand. He squinted at the approaching figure, then swore under his breath. Get inside. Take Ellie to her room and stay there. What? Why? Just do it, Marla. The sharpness in his voice made her obey. She gathered Ellie, who'd been playing with a rag doll by the fire, and pulled her toward the bedroom. What's happening? Ellie asked, eyes wide with sudden fear. I don't know, honey. We're just going to wait here until your papa says it's okay. Through the thin walls, Marla heard the cabin door open. Heard Cole's voice, hard and suspicious. Who are you? What do you want? A man's voice answered, rough and pained. Please, they're hunting me. I need help. I don't know you. Keep moving. Please. The desperation in the stranger's voice was palpable. Just for one night. I'll leave at first light. I swear it. A long pause. Then Cole's voice resigned. Get inside. Quick. Marla heard footsteps, the thud of something heavy hitting the floor. She cracked the bedroom door open slightly and saw a man collapse near the fireplace. He was maybe 30, tall and lean, with dark hair matted with blood. His coat was torn, his face bruised and swollen. Cole stood over him, rifle still ready. Start talking. Who's hunting you and why? The stranger's eyes rolled toward Cole. Men from Black Hollow Ridge, works for Dorian Pike. I stole something from him. Cole's entire body went rigid at the name. Pike. You know him? Everyone knows him, owns half the businesses in town, runs the other half through fear. Cole's voice was tight. What did you steal? Documents, evidence of what he's really doing, trafficking women and children through his saloons and hotels, selling them like cattle. The stranger coughed, and blood flecked his lips. I'm Thomas Grayson. I was his accountant until I found out what the numbers really meant. Marla's hand flew to her mouth. Thomas Grayson, the man who'd arranged her marriage to Cole. She'd thought he was just a town busybody, someone who liked playing matchmaker, not someone caught up in something this dark. You're an idiot, Cole said flatly. Pike will kill you for this. Kill anyone who helps you too. I know. That's why I came here instead of town. You're far enough out that maybe... Thomas broke off, coughing again. Maybe they won't think to look. They'll think of everywhere eventually. Cole lowered the rifle slightly. You're bleeding. Got shot trying to get away. Bullet went through, I think. But the wound's bad. Cole looked toward the bedroom where Marla and Ellie were hiding. His face was conflicted, torn between self-preservation and something else. Marla, he called. Come out here. She emerged slowly, keeping Ellie behind her. When she saw Thomas clearly, recognition flickered in his eyes. Mrs. Bennet, he said weakly, didn't expect to see you again so soon. How's married life treating you? You know him? Cole asked Marla. He's the one who told me about your need for a wife, who made the introduction. Marla moved closer, despite her fear. He helped me. Seemed like the right thing to do at the time, Thomas said. You both looked like you needed saving. Didn't realize I'd end up needing saving myself. Papa, he's hurt really bad, Ellie said from the doorway, her voice small but certain. We have to help him. Cole looked at his daughter, then at Marla, then at the bleeding man on his floor. Marla could see the war happening behind his eyes, every instinct telling him to protect his family versus the knowledge that leaving a man to die went against something fundamental. If I help you, Cole said finally, and Pike finds out, he'll come for all of us. My daughter, my wife, everything I've built here. I know, Thomas said. I wouldn't ask if I had anywhere else to go. You're asking anyway. Yes. The silence stretched. Then Cole set down the rifle and moved to Thomas's side, already assessing the wound. Marla, I need hot water, clean cloth, and the whiskey from the cabinet. Ellie, get my sewing kit from the shelf. They worked for hours. The bullet had indeed gone through Thomas's shoulder, but the wound was infected, the flesh around it angry and swollen. Cole cleaned it with whiskey while Thomas bit down on a leather strap to keep from screaming. Marla held the man steady, her hands slick with blood, her stomach churning, but her resolve firm. Why are you doing this? Thomas gasped between waves of pain. You barely know me. Because someone once told me you always stand up for people who can't stand up for themselves, Marla said quietly, glancing at Ellie. Even if it's hard, even if it's scary. The little girl stood nearby, holding clean bandages, her face pale but determined. By the time they finished, dawn was breaking. Thomas had passed out, either from pain or exhaustion or both. Cole carried him to the small cot in the storage room and covered him with blankets. He stays one night, Cole said to Marla as they washed blood from their hands. Maybe two until he's strong enough to travel. Then he leaves and we pray Pike's men never find out he was here. All right. I mean it, Marla. This is dangerous. Pike isn't just some petty criminal. He's got judges in his pocket, lawmen on his payroll. He's untouchable. Then why did Thomas risk stealing from him? Because some things are worth the risk, I suppose. Cole dried his hands roughly. Doesn't mean I have to like it. Thomas stayed 2 days, then 3, then a week. The wound was healing but slowly, and he was too weak to travel far. During that time, he told them everything about Pike's operation, about the women who disappeared into his network, about the corruption that ran through Black Hollow Ridge like rot through timber. There was a girl, Thomas said one evening while they all sat around the fire. Maybe 17, 18. She came to town looking for work, ended up at one of Pike's saloons. I saw her name in the ledgers, saw where she was sent after. She just vanished. Marla felt ice settle in her stomach. What was her name? Lily something. Lily Hensley. The room tilted. Marla gripped the arm of her chair so hard her knuckles went white. That's my sister, she whispered. Thomas's face went pale. What? Lily. She's my younger sister. She ran away from our uncle's house 2 years ago. I hoped she'd found somewhere better, somewhere safe. Marla. Thomas's voice was heavy with pity. If she ended up with Pike. Don't. Marla stood abruptly. Don't say it. She walked outside into the cold, her chest tight, her mind reeling. Lily. Beautiful, wild Lily, who'd always dreamed of something bigger than their uncle's house, who talked about going to California or New York or anywhere that wasn't Black Hollow Ridge. The door opened behind her. Cole stepped out, closing it quietly. "You okay?" he asked. "No." Marla wrapped her arms around herself. "My sister. All this time I thought she was out there living her life, being happy, and she was— You don't know that for sure. Thomas just saw a name in a ledger. You heard him. Girls who go into Pike's operation don't come out." Cole was quiet for a moment. "What do you want to do?" Marla turned to look at him. "What can I do? You said it yourself. Pike's untouchable. Even if Lily is alive, even if I could find her, what then?" "I don't know." Cole's voice was honest, blunt. "But I know what you're thinking, and I'm telling you now, you can't go after her. She's my sister. And you're my wife. Ellie's—" He stopped himself. "You made promises to us. You said you'd stay." "I know what I said." "Then you know you can't just leave to chase ghosts. Pike will kill you, or worse. So I'm supposed to do nothing? Just accept that she's gone?" "I'm saying you need to think. Really think about what trying to find her would cost. Not just you, all of us." Marla knew he was right, knew it in her bones. But the thought of Lily out there somewhere, suffering, maybe waiting for someone to save her, it was unbearable. "I need time," she said finally. "Take it. But Marla, don't do anything stupid. Please." He went back inside, leaving her alone with the cold and her thoughts, and the terrible knowledge that was eating her alive. Over the next few days, Marla became consumed with questions she couldn't answer. She pressed Thomas for every detail about the ledgers, about Pike's operations, about where the girls were taken. Thomas told her what he could, but it wasn't much. He'd only seen records, not the actual trafficking. "There might be a way to find out more," Thomas said carefully. "Pike keeps his main records in the back office of his biggest saloon. If someone could get in there—" "No," Cole said flatly. He was standing by the door, arms crossed. "Absolutely not. I wasn't suggesting—" "Yes, you were, and the answer is no." "Cole." Marla's voice was quiet but firm. "I need to know what happened to her. You need to stay alive. That's what you need." They stared at each other across the cabin, the tension thick enough to cut. "Maybe I should go," Thomas said, standing. "I'm well enough now, and I'm bringing trouble to your door." "You're not going anywhere yet," Cole said without breaking eye contact with Marla. "Those men are still hunting you. They're going to find me eventually. Better it happens away from here. And better you're strong enough to actually survive it when they do." The argument died there, but the tension remained. Marla threw herself into work, trying to burn away the restless energy that had taken root in her chest. She chopped wood until her hands bled through the gloves, scrubbed floors that didn't need scrubbing. Anything to keep moving, keep busy, keep from thinking about Lily. Cole watched her with growing concern, but said nothing. Then, 10 days after Thomas arrived, everything came to a head. Marla was in the barn, mucking out stalls, when she found the letter. It had been tucked into the feed bin, folded and sealed with wax. Her name was written on the outside in Thomas's handwriting. Her hand shook as she opened it. The letter detailed everything: Pike's schedule, the layout of his saloon, the names of his guards, a plan for how someone could break in, find the records, get out alive. At the bottom, Thomas had written, "I know I can't stop you from trying. If you're going to do this, at least do it smart. But please, think about what you'd be leaving behind." Marla read it 3 times, her heart pounding. She could do this. She could get into Pike's office, find proof of what happened to Lily, maybe even find leads on where she was taken. She could finally know the truth. "What's that?" Marla spun around. Cole stood in the barn doorway, his expression unreadable. "Nothing. Don't lie to me." She clutched the letter tighter. "It's from Thomas." "I can see that." Cole moved closer. "What does it say?" "Cole, show me." For a moment she considered refusing, but the look in his eyes stopped her. She handed over the letter. Cole read it in silence, his jaw getting tighter with every line. When he finished, he crumpled the paper in his fist. "He told you how to break into Pike's saloon. He was trying to help." "Help?" Cole's voice rose. "He's helping you get yourself killed. I have to know what happened to Lily. Why?" Cole stepped closer, and Marla could see real fear in his eyes now. "Why does knowing change anything? If she's dead, knowing won't bring her back. If she's alive but gone, sold to someone states away, knowing won't help you find her. All it will do is put you in danger. She's my sister. And what about us? The words came out rough, almost desperate. What about Ellie? She already lost one mother. You're going to make her lose another? Marla flinched. That's not fair. None of this is fair. Cole's control finally broke. You think I don't understand? You think I don't know what it's like to lose someone and spend every day wondering if you could have saved them? But going after Pike won't save your sister. It'll just get you killed, and then Ellie will have to grieve you too, and I'll have to… He stopped abruptly, his face going pale. You'll have to what? Marla asked quietly. Cole looked at her, really looked at her, and for the first time she saw everything he'd been trying to hide. The fear, the attachment, the feelings he hadn't wanted to develop. I'll have to bury another wife, he said finally, his voice barely above a whisper. And I can't do that again. The confession hung between them, raw and honest and terrifying. Cole, Marla's voice shook. I didn't know. Of course you didn't. I didn't even know until Thomas showed up, and suddenly I was terrified of losing you. He laughed bitterly. Hell of a time to realize I care about someone. Marla stood frozen, the letter forgotten, everything forgotten except the man in front of her, who was finally letting her see him. I care about you too, she whispered. About you and Ellie. This place. All of it. Then don't leave. Don't go chasing after Pike, please. But Lily is gone, Marla. Maybe not dead, but gone. And trying to find her will only get you killed. Cole's hands clenched and unclenched at his sides. I know that's hard to hear. I know it feels like giving up. But staying alive isn't giving up. It's choosing the people who are here, who need you, over ghosts. Tears streamed down Marla's face. I don't know if I can do that. Then let me help you. Cole closed the distance between them, his hands coming up to cup her face gently. Let me help you live with this. You don't have to carry it alone anymore. For the first time since Thomas had spoken Lily's name, something in Marla's chest loosened. She leaned into Cole's touch, his rough hands impossibly gentle against her skin. I'm scared, she admitted. Scared of what might have happened to her. Scared that I'll never know. Scared that not knowing will eat me alive. I know, but you're stronger than you think. You'll survive this. His thumb brushed away her tears. We'll survive it together. Marla looked up at him, at this man who'd been a stranger 6 weeks ago, and was now the person standing between her and self-destruction. His eyes were more gray than blue in the dim barn light, and they held nothing but honesty. I don't know how to let go, she whispered. Neither do I. But we'll figure it out. He pulled her into his arms then, and Marla let herself collapse against his chest. She cried for Lily, for herself, for everything she'd lost and everything she was choosing to keep. Cole held her through it, his hand rubbing circles on her back, his chin resting on top of her head. I'm sorry, she said when the tears finally slowed, for scaring you, for almost doing something stupid. Don't apologize for caring about your sister. I feel like I failed her, like I should have looked harder, tried more, done something before it was too late. You can't save everyone, Marla. Sometimes you can barely save yourself. She pulled back enough to look at him. Is that what you tell yourself about your wife? Cole's expression tightened. Every damn day. Does it help? No. He gave her a sad smile. But I keep saying it anyway. They stood there in the barn, holding each other, two broken people trying to figure out how to be whole. I won't go after Pike, Marla said finally. I won't leave you and Ellie. The relief that crossed Cole's face was visible. Thank you. But I need your help with something. What? I need you to help me write a letter to Lily, in case she's out there somewhere and finds a way to send word. I need her to know I didn't forget her, that I would have come if I could. Cole nodded. We can do that. That night, after Ellie was in bed and Thomas was asleep in the storage room, Marla and Cole sat at the table together. Cole provided paper and ink while Marla poured out everything she needed to say to her sister. Apologies and love and desperate hope that somehow, somewhere, Lily was still alive. When she finished, her hand was cramped and her eyes were red, but something had shifted inside her. Not healed, not even close, but maybe the first step toward healing. I'll make sure this gets to Thomas, Cole said quietly. He'll know what to do with it, how to get it into the right hands in case she ever… Thank you. Marla folded the letter carefully. For everything, for understanding, for not thinking I'm crazy. You're not crazy. You're just someone who loves her sister. Cole paused. That's not a weakness. Feels like one sometimes. I know, but it's not. Marla looked at him across the table. At this man who'd been so cold and distant when she'd first arrived and who now looked at her like she mattered. When did this happen? She asked softly. What? This. Us. When did we become people who care about each other? Cole considered the question. I think it happened slowly. So slowly I didn't notice until it was already done. Are you okay with it? Terrified, but yeah, I'm okay with it. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, the fire crackling, the cabin warm around them. I should go to bed, Marla said eventually, though she didn't move. Probably. Cole didn't move either. Cole? Yeah? I'm glad I married you, even though it wasn't for love, even though we were both just trying to survive. I'm glad it was you. Something in Cole's expression softened. I'm glad too. He stood and walked around the table, offering his hand. Marla took it and let him pull her to her feet. They stood close, closer than they'd ever been except when working. Good night, Marla, Cole said quietly. Good night. He didn't let go of her hand right away. Instead, he lifted it to his lips and kissed her knuckles, a gentle, old-fashioned gesture that made Marla's breath catch. Then he released her and headed for the ladder to the loft, leaving her standing there with her heart pounding and her hand tingling where his lips had touched. Marla went to her room in a daze. She lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the evening, the fear in Cole's eyes, the desperation in his voice, the way he'd held her like she was something precious. She touched the place where he'd kissed her hand. Something was growing between them, something real and terrifying and completely unexpected. She'd come here expecting nothing but a roof over her head and food in her belly. She'd found something else entirely. The next morning, Thomas was stronger. Well enough to travel, he insisted, though his face was still pale and his movements careful. I put you in enough danger, he said over breakfast. Time I moved on before Pike's men show up. Where will you go? Ellie asked, her voice worried. Got a friend in Colorado, owes me a favor. Figure I'll head there, lay low for a while. And the evidence against Pike? Marla asked. I'm meeting someone in 3 weeks. A federal marshal who's been investigating Pike for years. If I can get the documents to him, Pike might actually face consequences for once. That's a big if, Cole said. It's the only if I've got. Thomas stood, wincing slightly. I can't thank you enough for what you've done. All of you. You saved my life. Just don't waste it, Cole said gruffly. Thomas smiled. I'll do my best. He shook Cole's hand, hugged Ellie, and then turned to Marla. I'm sorry, he said quietly. About your sister. About telling you. Maybe I should have kept it to myself. No. Marla's voice was firm. I needed to know, even if it hurts. If I hear anything, if I find any trace of her, I'll send word. I promise. Thank you. Thomas left just after noon, heading into the mountains with a pack full of supplies and Cole's old rifle for protection. They watched him disappear into the trees, and Marla wondered if they'd ever see him again. Think he'll make it? She asked Cole. Probably not, but he'll try. That counts for something. The days after Thomas left were strange. The cabin felt emptier somehow, quieter, but the quiet wasn't uncomfortable. If anything, it felt intimate, just the three of them again, settling back into their rhythm. But something had changed. Cole no longer kept his distance. He stood closer when they worked together, let his hand linger when he passed her things, smiled more often, especially at her, and Marla found herself watching him in return, noticing the way firelight caught in his dark hair, the strength in his hands, the rare moments when he laughed at something Ellie said, and his whole face transformed. One evening, after Ellie was in bed, they sat by the fire together. Cole was oiling his boots. Marla was mending one of his shirts where it had torn. Can I ask you something? Marla said. Sure. What was she like, your wife, Sarah? Cole's hand stilled on the boot. For a moment, Marla thought he wouldn't answer. Then he spoke, his voice soft. She was sunlight. That's the best way I can describe her. She walked into a room and everything got brighter. He paused. She laughed easy, made friends easy. Nothing seemed to bother her much. She She found joy in things, even hard things. She sounds wonderful. She was. Cole set down the boot and looked at Marla. She was everything I wasn't. That's probably why we worked. Do you think she'd approve of me being here? Yeah, I think she would. Cole's voice was certain. She'd like that Ellie's smiling again, that the house feels lived in. She'd probably tell me to stop being such a stubborn ass about the whole thing. Marla laughed. Would she? Absolutely. She never let me get away with anything. They fell into comfortable silence again. Marla finished the mending and folded the shirt carefully. I'm not trying to replace her, she said quietly. I know I couldn't even if I wanted to. I know you're not. Cole leaned forward, elbows on his knees. And I'm not asking you to be like her. You're different. That's okay. That's good, actually. Different how? Cole thought about it. Stronger, maybe. In a different way. Sarah's strength was in her joy. She refused to let life break her spirit. Your strength is, he struggled for words. You're a survivor. You do what needs doing even when it's hard, even when it hurts. That's its own kind of strength. Marla's throat tightened. I don't feel very strong most days. Nobody does. Doesn't make it less true. He stood and crossed to where she sat. Marla looked up at him, and the expression on his face made her heart skip. Marla, he said quietly, would you mind if I... He didn't finish the question. Instead, he reached down and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers gentle against her cheek. If you what? Marla whispered. If I kissed you, properly this time, not just your hand or your forehead, but... He stopped, looking almost embarrassed. Never mind. It's too soon. You probably don't... Yes? Marla said. Yes? Yes, you can kiss me. Cole's eyes widened slightly. Then, slowly, he leaned down. Marla's eyes closed as his lips touched hers. Soft, careful, testing. It lasted maybe 3 seconds before he pulled back. Was that okay? He asked, his voice rough. It was more than okay. He kissed her again, longer this time. His hand cupped her face, his thumb stroking her cheekbone. Marla's hands came up to grip his shirt, holding him close. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Cole rested his forehead against hers. I wasn't supposed to care about you, he said quietly. This was supposed to be practical. Simple. I know. But I do care about you more than I should probably. I care about you too. Even though I'm broken. Even though I'm not. I'm not good at this. At feelings. At saying the right things. Marla pulled back enough to look him in the eyes. I'm broken too. Maybe that's why this works. Cole smiled then, really smiled, and Marla's heart did something complicated in her chest. Maybe, he agreed. They stayed up talking until the fire burned low, sitting close together on the floor, shoulders touching. Cole told her about the ranch, about his plans for spring, about Ellie's future. Marla told him about her childhood, about her dreams, about what she hoped to build here. It wasn't declarations of love, it wasn't poetry or grand gestures, but it was real. It was honest. It was the foundation of something that might eventually become everything. When Marla finally went to bed, she lay in the darkness thinking about Cole's kiss, about his rough hands gentle on her face, about the way he looked at her like she was something worth keeping. She thought about Lily, too. The pain was still there, probably always would be. But it didn't consume her anymore. She could carry it and still move forward. Outside, wolves howled in the mountains. Inside, the cabin was warm and safe. And for the first time since arriving at this ranch, Marla felt like she was exactly where she belonged. 2 weeks of unexpected happiness followed. Marla woke each morning to find Cole already up, but now he waited for her before starting the coffee. They worked side by side with an ease that felt natural, their hands brushing when they passed tools, their conversations flowing without effort. At night, after Ellie went to bed, they sat together by the fire, sometimes talking, sometimes just existing in the same space. Cole kissed her goodnight now, soft and careful, like he was still afraid she might disappear. Marla had never been happier in her entire life, which is probably why she should have known it couldn't last. They came on a gray afternoon when the sky threatened snow. Marla was in the kitchen kneading bread dough, flour dusting her arms up to the elbows. Ellie was at the table practicing her letters. Cole was in the barn checking on a mare that seemed close to foaling. The sound of horses approaching made Marla look up. Through the window, she saw 4 men riding toward the ranch, their faces hard, their movements deliberate. Ice flooded her veins. "Ellie," she said quietly, forcing her voice to stay calm. "Go to your room. Don't come out until I tell you. But now, sweetheart, please." Something in Marla's tone made the girl obey. She scrambled off her chair and ran to her room, closing the door behind her. Marla wiped the flour from her hands and went to the door. She opened it just as the men dismounted, her heart hammering so hard she thought they might hear it. The man in front was tall and well-dressed, his coat expensive, his boots polished. He had dark hair going silver at the temples and a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Mrs. Bennet," he said pleasantly, "what a lovely home you have here." "Who are you?" Marla kept her hand on the doorframe, blocking the entrance. "Dorian Pike. I own several businesses in Black Hollow Ridge. Perhaps you've heard of me." Every muscle in Marla's body tensed. "What do you want?" "Just to talk. Is your husband home?" "He's working." "Pity." Pike's eyes swept over her, assessing. "Well, perhaps you can help me. I'm looking for a man, Thomas Grayson. Tall, dark-haired, about 30 years old. He stole something from me, and I'm very eager to get it back." "I don't know anyone by that name." "No?" Pike's smile widened. "That's interesting, because I have it on good authority that he was seen heading this direction about 2 weeks ago, and this ranch is the only habitable dwelling within 20 miles. "Then your authority is wrong. No one's been here but me and my family." Pike studied her face for a long moment. Then he turned to one of his men. "Search the barn." "You have no right," Marla started. "I have every right, Mrs. Bennet. I own this territory. The sheriff works for me. The judge works for me. Even the preacher owes me money." Pike's pleasant tone never wavered. "Now we can do this the easy way, or we can do it the hard way. Your choice." Before Marla could respond, Cole emerged from the barn, rifle in hand. He stopped when he saw the men, his face going carefully blank. "Pike," he said flatly. "Mr. Bennet, good to see you again. I was just explaining to your lovely wife that I'm looking for Thomas Grayson." "Never heard of him." "Really? Because you helped arrange his little matchmaking service that brought Mrs. Bennet here. I find it hard to believe you don't know the man." Cole's grip on the rifle tightened. "Knowing someone doesn't mean I know where they are." "Fair enough," Pike gestured to his men. "Search everything. The barn, the cabin, the outbuildings. If Grayson's been here, I want proof." "This is my property," Cole said, his voice hard. "And it's in my territory, which means what's yours is mine if I say so." The men moved past Marla into the cabin. She heard them overturning furniture, opening cabinets, their boots heavy on the wooden floor. Every crash made her flinch. "Please," she said to Pike. "There are children here. You're scaring my daughter." "Then you should have thought twice before harboring fugitives." Cole started forward, raising the rifle. One of Pike's men drew faster, pressing a pistol to Cole's temple before he could aim. "Drop it," the man said. Cole's jaw clenched, but he lowered the rifle. The man kicked it away and shoved Cole to his knees. "Don't hurt him," Marla cried. "Then tell me the truth." Pike walked closer, his voice still pleasant. "Did Thomas Grayson come here?" Marla's mind raced. If she said yes, Pike would know they'd been helping him. If she said no and he didn't believe her. The decision was taken from her when one of the men emerged from the cabin holding something. Thomas's letter. The one he'd written to Marla about breaking into Pike's saloon. Pike read it, his expression darkening. When he looked up, the pleasant mask was gone. "Well, well, seems you've been lying to me, Mrs. Bennet. This letter details my operation quite thoroughly. Where did you get it?" Marla said nothing. Pike nodded to his man. The pistol cracked against Cole's skull. He went down hard, blood streaming from a cut above his eye. "No!" Marla lunged forward, but another man grabbed her arms, holding her back. "Where is Grayson?" Pike demanded. "Gone," Cole spat, pushing himself up on his hands. "Left a week ago. We don't know where." "And the documents he stole from me?" "He took them with him." Pike considered this. Then he smiled that terrible smile again. "You know what I think? I think you helped him. I think you patched him up, fed him, sent him on his way with my property. That makes you accessories to theft." "We didn't know what he'd stolen," Marla said desperately. He showed up hurt. We helped him. That's all. Noble. Stupid, but noble. Pike walked around Cole slowly. Here's what's going to happen. You're going to tell me everything Grayson told you. Where he was going, who he was meeting, what his plans were, and then you're going to pray I'm in a forgiving mood. We don't know anything, Cole said. Pike sighed. I was afraid you'd say that. He gestured to his men. They hauled Cole to his feet and started dragging him toward the barn. What are you doing? Marla struggled against the man holding her. Where are you taking him? Somewhere we can have a more private conversation, Pike said. Don't worry, I'll bring him back. Probably. Stop! Please! We told you everything we know! But they were already gone, disappearing into the barn. The man holding Marla shoved her toward the cabin. Inside, don't come out unless you want to watch. Marla stumbled through the door and immediately ran to Ellie's room. The little girl was huddled on her bed, tears streaming down her face. Mama, she sobbed, using the word for the first time. What's happening? Where's Papa? Shh, it's okay, baby. Everything's going to be okay. Marla pulled Ellie into her arms, her own heart breaking. Through the cabin walls, she could hear sounds from the barn, shouting, the crack of something hitting flesh. Cole's voice raised in pain. She had to do something, had to stop this. But what? She was one woman against 4 armed men. If she tried to fight, they'd kill her. And then what would happen to Ellie? The sounds from the barn grew worse. Cole wasn't screaming, he was too stubborn for that. But she could hear him groaning, could hear Pike's voice asking questions over and over. Marla made a decision. Ellie, listen to me very carefully. I need you to stay in this room. Lock the door. Don't open it for anyone except me or your papa. Understand? Where are you going? To help your father. No. Ellie's grip tightened. They'll hurt you too. Maybe, but I can't just sit here while they hurt him. Marla cupped the girl's face. You're so brave, sweetheart. The bravest girl I know. Can you be brave a little longer for me? Ellie nodded, tears still falling. Marla kissed her forehead and stood. She locked Ellie's door from the outside. The girl would be furious later, but at least she'd be safe, and then walked out of the cabin. The guard at the door tried to stop her. I said stay inside. I need to talk to Mr. Pike. He's busy. I have information about Thomas, about where he was going. The man hesitated, then grabbed her arm and dragged her toward the barn. Inside, the scene was worse than Marla had imagined. Cole was on his knees in the center of the barn, his face bloody, his shirt torn. Pike stood over him, brass knuckles on his right hand stained red. Mrs. Bennett, Pike said without turning, come to join us? I'll tell you what you want to know, Marla said quickly. Just stop hurting him. Marla, no! Cole tried to stand, but one of the men kicked him back down. I'm listening, Pike said. Marla's mind raced, trying to remember details from Thomas's letter, from his conversations. She had to give Pike something convincing enough to stop the beating, but not enough to actually endanger Thomas. He was going to Colorado, to a town called Silverton. He has a friend there who owes him a favor. And the documents? He has them with him, hidden somewhere. He wouldn't tell us where. Pike studied her face. You're lying. I'm not, I swear. You are. I can always tell when people are lying. It's a gift. Pike turned back to Cole. Your wife is trying to protect you. It's sweet. Pointless, but sweet. He raised his fist again. Wait! Marla's voice cracked. What do you want? What will it take for you to leave us alone? Pike paused. An interesting question. What do I want? He walked toward her slowly. I want my property returned. I want Thomas Grayson dead. And I want to make sure no one else gets the stupid idea to steal from me. We can't give you any of that. No, you can't. Pike smiled. But you can give me something else. Marla's stomach dropped. What? A message. To anyone else who might think about crossing me. Pike gestured to the barn. I burned this place to the ground. Leave your husband and his daughter homeless in the middle of winter. Let everyone know what happens when you help my enemies. No. The word came out as a whisper. Please. We'll do anything. Actually, Pike interrupted. There is one thing you could do. What? Come work for me, at my main saloon in town. Cole's head snapped up. No, absolutely not. I wasn't asking you, Mr. Bennett. Pike kept his eyes on Marla. What do you say, Mrs. Bennet? You come work for me, help me recoup my losses, and I'll leave your family alone. The ranch stays standing. Your husband and stepdaughter survive the winter." Marla understood what he was really asking. She'd seen the girls who worked at Pike's saloons. She knew what work meant. "Don't do it," Cole said hoarsely. "Marla, don't." "How long?" Marla asked, her voice steady despite the terror flooding through her. "Until spring. 3 months, give or take." "And then I can come home?" "If you survive that long, sure. I'm a man of my word." "Marla." Cole was crying now, actually crying, trying to get to his feet. "Don't do this. We'll figure something else out. There's nothing else," Marla said quietly. She looked at him, this man she'd come to love, and tried to memorize his face. "It's the only way to keep you and Ellie safe." "I don't want to be safe if it means losing you." "You won't lose me. I'll come back." "You don't know that." "Yes, I do." Marla turned to Pike. "I'll do it. I'll work for you. But I want your word that you won't touch my family. No retaliation, no burning the ranch, nothing. You have my word." "Marla, no!" Cole was on his feet now, fighting against the men holding him. "Please don't do this. Please!" Marla walked to him, and the men let her approach. She cupped his bloody face in her hands. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I'm so sorry, but I can't watch them destroy you. I can't let Ellie lose everything." "Then let me go instead. I'll work for him. I'll do whatever. He doesn't want you. He wants to hurt you. This is the only way." Cole's hands came up to grip her wrists. "I can't lose you. Not after. I can't." "You won't. I promise I'll come back." Marla kissed him, tasting blood and salt and desperation. "Take care of Ellie. Tell her I love her. Tell her this wasn't her fault." "Marla." Pike's men pulled them apart. Marla was dragged backward while Cole fought like a wild animal to reach her. "Let him go," Pike ordered. "Let him watch her leave. It'll be a better lesson." They released Cole. He stumbled forward, his face destroyed, reaching for Marla. "Please," he begged. "Please don't take her. Take me instead. Kill me if you want, but leave her alone, please." Marla had never heard Cole beg for anything. The sound of it broke something inside her. "I love you," she called to him as Pike's men dragged her toward the horses. "I love you and Ellie, and I swear I'll come back to you. Marla, Marla." They lifted her onto a horse. Through her tears, Marla saw Ellie's face in the cabin window, pressed against the glass, her small hands beating at the pain. Then they were riding away, and Marla twisted in the saddle to look back. Cole had collapsed to his knees in the yard, his hands fisted in the dirt, his shoulders shaking with sobs. Behind him, the cabin door flew open and Ellie ran out. She must have broken the lock, screaming for Marla to come back. Cole caught his daughter before she could run after the horses. He held her while she fought him, held her while she screamed, held her while they both watched the only person who'd brought light back into their lives disappear into the mountains. Marla turned forward, forcing herself not to look back again. If she did, she'd jump off this horse and run back to them. Consequences be damned. Pike rode beside her, looking pleased with himself. "Smart choice, Mrs. Bennet. Your family will thank you for it. Eventually." Marla said nothing. She focused on breathing, on staying upright, on not falling apart completely. She touched the place on her finger where her wedding ring sat. Pike had let her keep it, probably because it amused him, and made herself a promise. She would survive this. She would endure whatever came next. And when spring arrived, she would go home. Back to Cole. Back to Ellie. Back to the life she'd only just started to build, no matter what it cost her. The ride to Black Hollow Ridge took 3 hours. By the time they arrived, Marla was numb with cold and shock. Pike took her to his largest saloon, a massive 2-story building that dominated the main street. Inside, it was warm and well lit, full of the smell of whiskey and cigar smoke. Girls in low-cut dresses moved between tables, serving drinks, laughing at men's jokes, sitting on laps. Pike led Marla upstairs to a small, bare room. "You'll stay here. Work starts tonight. Clara will show you what to do." "And if I refuse?" Pike's smile was cold. "Then I ride back to that ranch and finish what I started. Your choice." He left, locking the door behind him. Marla sat on the narrow bed and let herself cry. For everything she'd lost, for the terror she'd seen in Cole's eyes, for Ellie's screams, for the life that had been ripped away just when she'd started to believe in it. But she only let herself cry for an hour. Then she wiped her eyes, straightened her spine, and prepared to survive. The first night was a blur. Clara, a tired woman in her 30s with kind eyes, gave Marla a dress that revealed too much and showed her how to work the floor, serve drinks, smile at the men, deflect unwanted touches without making them angry. "Don't fight it," Clara said quietly. "Fighting just makes it worse. Find a way to disappear inside yourself. It's the only way to get through." Marla tried. She smiled and served and endured hands on her waist, her hips, places that made her skin crawl. She thought about the ranch, about Cole chopping wood in the early morning light, about Ellie's laughter when the kittens did something silly, about the way the fire felt on cold nights when the three of them sat together. She survived the first night, then the second, then the third. Time became strange. Days blurred together. Pike kept her working long hours, barely sleeping, always exhausted. She lost weight. Her hands developed calluses from carrying heavy trays. Her feet ached constantly from the heeled shoes they made her wear. But she held on to her memories of the ranch like a lifeline. Every night, alone in her locked room, she touched her wedding ring and whispered promises to herself. "I will survive this. I will go home. They are waiting for me." 2 weeks in, Clara slipped her a piece of bread during a break. "You need to eat more," she said quietly. "You're wasting away." "I'm fine." "You're not. None of us are." Clara hesitated. "How did you end up here? You don't have the look of someone who chose this life." Marla told her the story, about Thomas, about Pike's men, about the choice she'd made. Clara's eyes filled with tears. "That's the most selfless thing I've ever heard. Or the most stupid."
"No. Selfless." No. Clara squeezed her hand. "Your family is lucky to have you. I just hope they remember that when I get back." "They will. Love like that doesn't forget." Marla wanted to believe her. Meanwhile, at the ranch, Cole was falling apart.
The first few days after Marla was taken, he could barely function. He fed the animals mechanically, chopped wood because it had to be done, cooked food he couldn't taste. Ellie cried constantly, asking when Marla was coming home, why she had left, whether she still loved them. "She loves you more than anything," Cole told his daughter over and over. "She left to protect you, to keep you safe." "I don't want to be safe if she's not here." Cole understood the feeling completely. But on the fourth day, something changed. Thomas Grayson appeared at the ranch, drawn by rumors that Pike had taken someone. When he learned what had happened, his face went white. "This is my fault," he said. "If I hadn't come here—" "It's Pike's fault," Cole interrupted, his voice hard. "And we're going to make him pay for it." "How? He's got half the town in his pocket." "Then we go above his head. You said you were meeting a federal marshal. When?" 2 weeks. Then we have 2 weeks to gather evidence. Real evidence. Enough to bring Pike down and get Marla back." Something in Cole's face must have scared Thomas, because he took a step back. The quiet, grief-stricken widower was gone. In his place was someone who looked capable of terrible things. "What do you need me to do?" Thomas asked. "Tell me everything you know about Pike's operation, every detail, every name, every crime you can prove." They worked through the night, planning. Thomas had hidden copies of Pike's ledgers. He'd been smart enough not to carry everything with him. Together, they documented dates, names, amounts, girls who'd disappeared, money that had been laundered, officials who'd been bribed. "It's enough," Thomas said finally. "It's enough to bring federal charges." "Good." Cole stood, strapping on his gun belt. "Because I'm done waiting." "What are you going to do?" "Whatever it takes to get my wife back." Cole left Ellie with a trusted neighbor, a widow named Mrs. Patterson, who asked no questions, and rode into town with Thomas. They met with the federal marshal in secret, handed over the evidence, and gave their testimony. The marshal, a hard-faced man named Garrett, studied the documents with growing interest. "This is substantial. Pike's been on our radar for years, but we could never get enough evidence to move on him." "So you'll arrest him?" Cole demanded. "Yes, but it'll take time to coordinate with—" "I don't have time. He has my wife." Garrett's expression softened. "I understand. But if we move too fast, Pike will destroy evidence, kill witnesses, disappear. We need to be smart about this." "How long?" 1 week, maybe 2. Cole's hands clenched. Fine. But if anything happens to her, I'll do everything I can to keep her safe. You have my word. It wasn't enough. But it was all Cole had. He spent the next week in a state of barely controlled fury. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw Marla being dragged away, heard her promising to come back. Thomas stayed at the ranch, helping with chores, keeping Cole from doing something reckless. She's strong, Thomas said one night, stronger than Pike realizes. She'll survive this. And if she doesn't, then Pike won't survive what comes after. I've seen your face. I know what you're capable of. Cole didn't deny it. Finally, word came from Marshal Garrett. The raid would happen in 3 days. Federal agents were in position. Everything was ready. Cole and Thomas rode out before dawn, determined to be there when it happened. The raid on Pike's saloon was swift and brutal. Federal marshals surrounded the building, arrested Pike and his men before they could react. Girls poured out of the building, some crying with relief, some too traumatized to understand they were being rescued. Cole pushed through the chaos, searching desperately for Marla. He found her in an upstairs room, sitting on the bed, staring at nothing. Marla. She looked up, and the hope that flooded her face nearly brought him to his knees. Cole? Her voice was hoarse, disbelieving. Is it really? He crossed the room in 2 strides and pulled her into his arms. She collapsed against him, sobbing, her hands fisting in his shirt like she was afraid he'd disappear. I've got you, he whispered against her hair. I've got you. You're safe now. You came for me. Of course I came for you. Did you really think I wouldn't? Marla pulled back enough to look at him. She looked terrible, too thin, exhausted, her eyes haunted. But she was alive. She was here. I thought maybe you'd... She couldn't finish the sentence. Never, Cole said fiercely. I would never give up on you. Never. He helped her stand, wrapped his coat around her shoulders, and led her out of that terrible place. Outside, the morning sun was breaking through clouds, bathing the street in golden light. Thomas was waiting with the horses. When he saw Marla, relief washed over his face. Mrs. Bennet, thank heavens. Thank you, Marla said quietly, for helping them find me. It's the least I could do. This was my fault from the start. No, Marla said firmly. It was Pike's fault, only his. Cole lifted Marla onto his horse and climbed up behind her. She leaned back against his chest, and he wrapped his arms around her, holding her close. They rode home as the sun climbed higher, burning away the clouds. Marla didn't speak much, just sat in Cole's arms, occasionally touching his hands like she needed to make sure he was real. When the ranch finally came into view, Marla started crying again. I wasn't sure I'd ever see it again, she whispered. You're home now. You're safe. Mrs. Patterson was waiting on the porch with Ellie. The little girl saw them coming and ran, her feet flying over the ground. Cole pulled the horse to a stop and helped Marla down. She barely had time to steady herself before Ellie crashed into her, wrapping her arms around Marla's waist and holding on for dear life. You came back, Ellie sobbed. You came back. You came back. I promised I would, Marla said, dropping to her knees so she could hold Ellie properly. I always keep my promises. I was so scared. I thought, shh, baby. I'm here now. I'm not going anywhere ever again. Cole stood watching them, this woman he'd almost lost and the daughter they were raising together. When Marla looked up at him, tears streaming down her face but smiling for the first time in 3 weeks, something settled in his chest. She was home. They were together. That was all that mattered. That night, after Ellie finally fell asleep, she'd refused to leave Marla's side for even a moment. Cole and Marla sat by the fire together. Marla was wearing one of her old dresses, her hair clean and braided, looking more like herself than she had in weeks. Thank you, she said quietly, for not giving up on me. I told you I wouldn't. I meant it. I know, but I was afraid anyway. She turned to look at him. What Pike did to you that day? Are you okay? Cole touched the fading bruises on his face. I'm fine. It looked worse than it was. Don't lie to me. All right, it hurt like hell, and I'm still sore, but I'd take it 100 times over rather than let him have you. Marla took his hand, pressing it against her cheek. When I was there, in that place, I kept thinking about you, about Ellie, about coming home. It's the only thing that kept me going. Marla,
Let me finish. She took a shaky breath. I need you to know something. I didn't choose to stay at this ranch just because I needed somewhere to live. I didn't come back just because I promised. I came back because I love you, Cole Bennett. I love you and Ellie and this life we're building. I love you more than I've ever loved anything. Cole's throat tightened. I love you too, so much it scares me. When Pike took you, His voice broke. I couldn't breathe, couldn't think. All I could see was losing you the way I lost Sarah, and I knew I wouldn't survive it. Not again. You don't have to survive it. I'm here. I'm staying. Cole pulled her close, burying his face in her hair. Promise me. Promise me you'll never sacrifice yourself like that again. I can't promise that. If it came down to you and Ellie, or me, I'd make the same choice every time. That's what I'm afraid of. They sat in silence for a while, holding each other, listening to the fire crackle and the wind outside. What happens to Pike now? Marla asked eventually. Federal prison, along with everyone who worked for him. The marshal says it's an airtight case. Good. There was steel in Marla's voice. He deserves worse, but I'll take it. He'll never hurt anyone again. That's what matters. Marla nodded. Then she pulled back and looked at Cole seriously. I want us to get married again. What? A real wedding, not an arrangement or a business deal. A real ceremony where we choose each other because we want to, not because we have to. Cole stared at her. You want to marry me again? I want to marry you for real this time. I want to stand in front of people and say vows that actually mean something. She paused. I want everyone to know that you're mine and I'm yours, and it's not about survival anymore. It's about love. Something that might have been hope bloomed in Cole's chest. When? After the first heavy snow, when everything's covered in white and beautiful and new. Why then? Because that's when we started. When things started changing between us. I want to mark it. Cole cupped her face in his hands. Marla Bennett, will you marry me? Again? For real this time? Yes, she whispered. 1,000 times yes. He kissed her then, deep and long and full of everything he couldn't say. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Marla was smiling. I'm home, she said softly. You're home, Cole agreed. And outside, the first snowflakes of what would become the first heavy snow began to fall. The snow fell for 3 days straight, transforming the ranch into something from a dream. By the time it stopped, everything was buried under 2 feet of pristine white. The world hushed and knew. Marla stood at the window watching it accumulate, Cole's arms wrapped around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. Still want to get married in this? He asked quietly. More than anything, even though half the town will probably refuse to come after what happened at the first wedding? Marla turned in his arms to face him. I don't care if nobody comes. I only need you and Ellie and someone to say the words. The rest doesn't matter. But when word got out about the second wedding, something unexpected happened. People started showing up at the ranch, not to judge or whisper, but to help. Mrs. Patterson brought fabric for a new dress. Clara, who'd been rescued from Pike's saloon and was now working at the general store, appeared with ribbons and lace. Even some of the men who'd walked out of the first ceremony came back, shamefaced, offering to help prepare the cabin. We were wrong, one of them said to Cole while they were clearing snow from the yard, about how we treated your wife, about everything. Cole just nodded, his jaw tight. He wasn't the forgiving type, but he was practical enough to accept help when it was offered. The wedding was planned for the following Sunday. Marla spent the week in a strange state of nervous anticipation, trying to heal from what had happened while also preparing for what came next. The nightmares were bad. She'd wake gasping, thinking she was back in that upstairs room at Pike's saloon. But Cole was always there, pulling her close, reminding her she was safe. I've got you, he'd whisper in the darkness. Nothing's going to hurt you here. Slowly, the nightmares came less frequently. Slowly, Marla started to feel like herself again. 3 days before the wedding, a letter arrived. Thomas brought it personally, riding through the snow with a careful expression. This came through the marshal's office, he said, handing it to Marla. It's about your sister. Marla's hands shook as she opened it. Cole stood beside her, ready to catch her if the news was bad. The letter was from a woman named Ruth, who ran a boarding house in Denver. She'd been helping women escape Pike's network for years, moving them through an underground system of safe houses. She'd heard about Pike's arrest and wanted Marla to know that Lily had passed through her house 18 months ago. She was alive, Marla whispered, tears streaming down her face. 18 months ago, she was alive. Is she still? Cole asked gently.
Marla kept reading. Ruth wrote that she'd helped Lily get on a train to San Francisco, given her money and contacts, set her up with a job in a respectable dress shop. The last Ruth had heard, Lily was doing well, had even gotten engaged to a clerk at the shipping company next door. She made it out, Marla said, her voice breaking. She's safe. She's happy. She couldn't finish. Cole pulled her into his arms while she sobbed with relief. All this time, the guilt and fear and terrible wondering, and Lily had been safe, had been building a life. I want to write to her, Marla said when she could speak again. Ruth included an address. I want Lily to know I'm okay too, that I'm not angry she left, that I understand. Then write to her, Cole said. Tell her about us, about Ellie, about coming home to the ranch. Marla did. She poured her heart into that letter, told Lily about the marriage, about Pike, about finding love in the last place she'd expected it. She told her sister that she understood why she'd run, that she was grateful she'd survived, that she hoped someday they might see each other again. When she finished, she felt lighter than she had in years, like she'd been carrying a weight she could finally set down. The night before the wedding, Ellie couldn't sleep. She came padding into the main room where Marla was sitting by the fire, unable to settle herself. Can't you sleep either? Marla asked, making room for the girl beside her. I'm too excited. Ellie climbed up, snuggling into Marla's side. Tomorrow you'll really be my mama, not just pretend. I'm already really your mama, sweetheart. The ceremony doesn't change that. But it makes it official. That's what Papa said. Marla smiled. I suppose it does. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the fire. Then Ellie said quietly, I still remember my first mama sometimes. Is that okay? Of course it's okay. She was your mother. You should remember her. But you're my mother too now. Can I have two mothers? Marla's throat tightened. Yes, baby. You can absolutely have two mothers, one who loved you first and one who loves you now. There's no rule that says you have to choose.
Do you think she'd like you, my first mama? I hope so. I think she'd be happy you have someone who cares about you, who wants to keep you safe. Ellie was quiet for a moment. Then she said, I think she'd like that you make Papa smile again. He stopped smiling after she died, but he smiles now when he looks at you. Marla blinked back tears. Does he? All the time. He thinks I don't notice, but I do. Ellie yawned. I'm glad you came here. Even though it was scary at first, even though mean people said awful things. I'm glad you stayed. Me too, sweetheart. Me too. She carried Ellie back to bed, tucked her in, and stood in the doorway for a moment watching the child sleep. This girl who'd defended her to a church full of adults. This brave, fierce, loving child who'd decided Marla was worth keeping. When Marla returned to the main room, Cole was coming down from the loft. He'd been giving her space, letting her have time alone with Ellie. She asleep? He asked. Finally, she's excited about tomorrow. So am I. Cole moved closer. Nervous, though. About what? Saying the vows. Meaning them. He paused. Making promises I'm terrified I won't be able to keep. Marla understood. They'd both lost so much. Both learned that loving someone meant risking the kind of pain that could destroy you. We can't promise we'll never lose each other, she said quietly. Life doesn't work that way. But we can promise to love each other while we have the chance, to not waste the time we're given. Cole cupped her face in his rough hands. When did you get so wise? I'm not wise. I'm just tired of being afraid. Yeah. He rested his forehead against hers. Me too. They stood like that for a long moment, breathing together, existing in the same space. Then Cole pulled back slightly. I have something for you, for tomorrow. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small wooden box. It's not much, but Marla opened the box. Inside was a necklace, a simple silver chain with a small pendant shaped like a mountain peak. I had it made in town, Cole said, suddenly looking uncertain. The peak is supposed to be the mountain behind the ranch. the one you can see from the kitchen window. I thought, I wanted you to have something that reminded you this is home, that you belong here. Marla's vision blurred. Cole, it's beautiful. You like it? I love it. She took it out carefully. Will you put it on me?
He fastened it around her neck, his fingers gentle on her skin. The pendant settled just above her heart, the weight of it comforting. Perfect, Cole said softly. Marla touched the pendant. I have something for you too. It's not ready yet. I was going to give it to you tomorrow, but I can tell you about it. What is it? A quilt. I've been working on it in secret, using scraps of fabric from around the cabin. Pieces of Ellie's old baby clothes, a bit of Sarah's sewing, one of your old shirts, even a piece of that terrible wedding dress from the first ceremony. Marla smiled. I wanted to make something that showed our family, all of us, past and present woven together. Cole's eyes were suspiciously bright. That's perfect. Mrs. Patterson is helping me finish it. Should be done by Christmas.
I can't wait to see it. They spent the rest of the evening together, talking about small things and big things, making plans for spring, dreaming about the future. When it got late, Cole kissed her goodnight, soft and sweet and full of promise, before climbing back to the loft. Marla went to her room, but she stood at the window for a long time, looking out at the snow-covered mountains. Tomorrow she would marry Cole Bennett for the second time. But this time it wouldn't be a transaction or an arrangement or a desperate grab at survival. This time it would be a choice, a declaration, a promise freely given. She touched the pendant at her throat and smiled. The morning of the wedding dawned clear and cold, the sun blazing off the snow until everything sparkled. Marla woke early, her stomach fluttering with nerves. The good kind of nerves, the excited kind. Mrs. Patterson and Clara arrived with the dress they'd made. A simple cream-colored gown with long sleeves and delicate embroidery at the collar and cuffs. Nothing fancy, but it fit Marla perfectly, didn't pull or strain, made her feel beautiful instead of inadequate. You look lovely, Clara said, her eyes shining. Like a real bride this time. I was a real bride last time too, Marla said. I just didn't know it yet. They did her hair, not fancy, just clean and soft, with the front pieces pulled back and secured with a ribbon. Clara wanted to add flowers, but there were none to be found in the middle of winter, so they settled for a simple elegance that suited Marla better anyway. When she was ready, Marla looked at herself in the mirror. She looked different than she had at the first wedding. Not thinner or prettier. She'd never be the kind of beautiful that stopped people in their tracks. But there was something in her face now, strength maybe, confidence. The look of someone who'd been through hell and come out the other side. Ready? Mrs. Patterson asked. More than ready. The ceremony was being held at the ranch this time, Cole had insisted. He'd cleared the main room, moved furniture, set up chairs. The preacher was the same one from the first wedding, looking considerably less nervous this time. The guests started arriving around noon. Not as many as the first wedding, but the people who came meant it. Thomas was there, looking healthy and whole. A few neighboring ranchers and their families. Some of the women who'd been rescued from Pike's saloon, wanting to witness something good come from all that darkness. Marla waited in her room until she heard the preacher start speaking. Then she opened the door and stepped out. Cole stood at the front of the room, and when he saw her, his face transformed. Not the blank, distant expression from the first wedding. This time he looked at her like she was the sun and moon and stars all at once. Ellie stood beside him in a new blue dress, holding a small bouquet of pine branches tied with ribbon. When she saw Marla, she grinned so wide it looked like her face might split in half. Marla walked toward them, not thinking about the people watching, not caring about anything except the man and child waiting for her. When she reached Cole, he took her hands, his grip warm and steady. You look beautiful, he whispered. So do you. The preacher cleared his throat. We are gathered here today for the second time to join this man and this woman in marriage. And I have to say, it's considerably more pleasant than the first time. A ripple of laughter went through the small crowd. Even Marla smiled. Marriage, the preacher continued, is about more than just love. It's about choosing someone every day, choosing to stay even when things get hard, choosing to fight for each other instead of against each other. These two people have already proven they can do that. They've survived loss and hardship and separation. They've fought their way back to each other.
And now they're here to make their commitment official. He looked at Cole. Cole Bennett, do you take Marla to be your lawfully wedded wife? Not out of convenience or necessity, but because you choose her, because you love her, because you want to spend the rest of your life with her? Cole's voice was clear and strong. I do. I choose her. I love her. And I will spend every day for the rest of my life trying to deserve her. Marla's eyes filled with tears. The preacher turned to her. Marla Bennett, do you take Cole to be your lawfully wedded husband? Not because you need him, but because you want him, because you love him, because you choose to build a life with him? I do, Marla said, her voice shaking with emotion. I choose him. I choose this family. I choose this life. Not because I have to, but because there's nowhere else I'd rather be. The rings? Ellie stepped forward, holding out 2 gold bands, the same ones from the first wedding, but polished and clean, ready to mean something new. Cole took Marla's ring and slipped it onto her finger. This time, he said quietly, I'm giving you this because I want you to be my wife, because I can't imagine my life without you in it, because you make everything better just by existing. Marla took his ring with trembling hands. This time, she said, I'm giving you this because you're not just my husband. You're my best friend, my partner, the person I trust most in the world, and I'm honored to spend my life with you. The preacher smiled. By the power vested in me, I now pronounce you, again, husband and wife. Cole, you may kiss your bride, and please actually kiss her this time. Cole grinned. Then he pulled Marla close and kissed her the way he'd wanted to at the first wedding, deep and passionate and full of everything he felt for her. The room erupted in applause and cheers, but Marla barely heard it. All she knew was Cole's arms around her and the feeling of finally being exactly where she belonged. When they broke apart, both breathless, Ellie launched herself at them, wrapping her arms around both their waists. You did it, she cried. You're really married now. We were really married before too, Cole said, scooping her up. But yeah, we did it. The celebration afterward was simple but joyful. Mrs. Patterson had made a cake. Someone brought a fiddle and played music. People ate and drank and danced in the small space of the cabin. It wasn't fancy or elegant, but it was real. It was theirs. Marla danced with Cole, his hands at her waist, her arms around his neck, moving slowly even though the music was fast. Happy? He asked. Happier than I've ever been. Even with everything that happened, Pike, and all of it? Even with all of it. Marla touched his face. I wouldn't change anything, Cole. Because every terrible thing led me here. To you, to Ellie, to this life. And I wouldn't trade that for anything. Cole kissed her softly. I love you, Marla Bennett. I love you too. Later, after the guests had left and Ellie had finally gone to bed, she'd fought sleep as long as she could, not wanting to miss anything. Cole and Marla stood at the window together, watching snow begin to fall again. Do you ever think about the first day you saw me? Marla asked. At the church? All the time. What do you think about? Cole was quiet for a moment. I think about how close I came to losing you before I even knew I needed you. How I almost let fear and grief keep me from seeing what was right in front of me. And what was right in front of you? A second chance. A way forward instead of just surviving. He turned her to face him. You saved me, Marla. You and Ellie, both. You gave me a reason to keep going, to be more than just the broken widower on the mountain. You saved me too. You gave me a home, a family, a place to belong. Marla leaned into him. We saved each other. Yeah, I guess we did. They stood like that for a long time, wrapped in each other's arms, watching the snow fall. The cabin was warm around them, the fire crackling, everything peaceful and right. What do you think happens next? Marla asked quietly. What do you mean? I mean, we've gotten through so much. The terrible wedding, learning to live together, Thomas showing up, Pike taking me. What happens now that life is just normal? Cole considered the question. I think normal is going to be the hardest part. No crisis to distract us. No immediate danger. Just day-to-day life, trying to build something lasting. Are you scared of that? A little. Are you? Terrified. Marla smiled. But I think I'm ready for it too. Ready to just be happy. To work the ranch and raise Ellie and wake up next to you every morning. Ready for boring and normal and safe. That doesn't sound boring to me. That sounds like everything I've ever wanted. The fire popped, sending sparks up the chimney. Outside, the world was white and silent, the mountains standing guard over their small piece of peace. "Cole?" Marla said softly. "Yeah? Do you still think about her, Sarah?" Cole tensed slightly, but he didn't pull away. "Sometimes. Less than I used to, but yeah, I think about her." "Do you feel guilty about being happy with me?" "I did, at first." He was quiet for a moment. "But I think she'd be glad that I found someone, that Ellie has a mother again, that we're not just surviving anymore." "I hope so. I know so." Sarah wasn't the jealous type. She wanted people to be happy. She'd want this for us. Marla turned in his arms to look up at him. "I hope I get to make you as happy as she did." "You already do, just in different ways." Cole tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. "Sarah was my first love. You're my second chance. Both matter. Both are real. I'm done feeling guilty for choosing to live instead of just existing." "Good. Because I choose to live too. With you. Building this life we're making." Cole kissed her then, deep and slow, pouring everything he couldn't say into the connection between them. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "Come to bed," he said quietly. "Please. I don't want to sleep alone anymore." Marla's heart skipped. They'd been married twice now, but Cole had still been sleeping in the loft, giving her space, not pushing. This was him saying he was ready, that he wanted her not just as his wife on paper, but in every way. "Okay," she whispered. They banked the fire and checked on Ellie one more time. The girl was sprawled across her bed, snoring softly, one arm wrapped around her doll. Then they went to Marla's room together. It wasn't perfect. They were both nervous, both carrying scars from everything they'd been through. But they were gentle with each other, patient, learning each other slowly. And when they finally fell asleep, tangled together in the narrow bed, Marla felt more complete than she ever had in her life. This was what she'd been searching for all along, even when she didn't know it. Not just survival, not just a roof over her head, but connection, love, belonging, home. Winter deepened over the next few weeks. The snow piled higher, making travel difficult, isolating them from town. But the isolation felt like a gift. Just the three of them, learning to be a family without outside interference. Marla finished the quilt on Christmas Eve and gave it to Cole wrapped in brown paper. When he unfolded it and saw what she'd made, all the pieces of their lives woven together into something whole and beautiful, he cried. Actually cried, tears running down his face while Ellie hugged him and Marla held his hand. "It's perfect," he said roughly. "It's the most perfect thing I've ever seen." They spread it on this big bed that night. Marla had moved her things to Cole's room permanently now and slept under it, warm and safe. On New Year's Eve, they stood outside watching the stars, bundled in coats and blankets, their breath fogging in the cold air. "New year," Cole said. "New start." "We've had a lot of new starts this year," Marla observed. "Yeah, but this one feels different, like we're not starting over, we're starting forward, building on what we've already made." "I like that." Marla leaned against him. "Starting forward. What do you want from this year?" Cole asked. "What are you hoping for?" Marla thought about it. "I want to see the ranch in spring. I want to watch Ellie grow. I want to learn everything there is to know about this life." She paused. "And I want to write to Lily. Keep that connection alive, even if we can't see each other yet." "What about us? What do you want for us?" "Just this. More days like today. More nights falling asleep next to you. More moments of being happy without waiting for something terrible to happen." Cole kissed the top of her head. "I think I can manage that." "What about you? What do you want?" "I want to expand the herd in spring. Maybe build another barn. Teach Ellie to ride properly." He was quiet for a moment. "And I want to stop being afraid. Stop waiting for the other shoe to drop. I want to trust that maybe, just maybe, we get to keep this happiness." "We do," Marla said firmly. "We fought too hard for it not to keep it." As if in agreement, Ellie's voice called from the cabin. "Mama, Papa, come inside, it's almost midnight." "Mama." The word still made Marla's chest warm every time she heard it. They went inside and the three of them counted down to midnight together. When it struck, Ellie insisted they all hug, So they stood in a circle, arms around each other, a family forged not by blood, but by choice. "Happy New Year," Ellie said. "Happy New Year, sweetheart," Cole replied. Marla just held them both, overcome with gratitude. A year ago, she'd been alone in her uncle's house, unwanted and unloved, facing a winter that might kill her. Now she stood in a warm cabin with a husband who adored her and a daughter who called her mama, surrounded by the life they were building together. She'd been the unwanted bride, the desperate girl in the too small dress, the woman everyone pitied. But she'd become so much more. She'd become strong, loved, essential. She'd become exactly who she was meant to be. Spring came eventually, as it always did. The snow melted, revealing the earth underneath. Green things started growing. The mare foaled successfully, and Ellie spent hours in the barn with the gangly-legged baby horse, naming her Starlight. Thomas visited in April, bringing news. Pike had been sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. His entire operation had been dismantled. The women who'd been trapped in his network were being helped, relocated, given new starts. "Your letter to Lily got through," Thomas said, handing Marla an envelope. She wrote back. Marla's hand shook as she opened it. Lily's handwriting was the same as she remembered, loopy and dramatic, full of personality. The letter was long, full of apologies and explanations and love. Lily wrote about her life in San Francisco, about the man she'd married, about the dress shop where she worked. She wrote about the guilt she'd carried for leaving Marla behind and the relief she felt knowing her sister was happy. "I always worried about you," Lily wrote. "Always wondered if you were okay, if you'd found somewhere to belong. Reading your letter, hearing about your family and the ranch and the life you've built, it's the best news I've ever gotten. You deserve happiness, Marla. You deserve everything good." At the end of the letter, Lily invited Marla to visit when travel was safer. "I want to meet this husband and daughter of yours. I want to see the woman you've become. I love you, sister. Always have. Always will." Marla read the letter 3 times, crying through all of them. Cole held her while she processed it all. The relief, the joy, the healing that came from knowing Lily was truly safe and happy. "We could go visit her," Cole said quietly. "This summer, maybe. All 3 of us. Take the train to San Francisco, meet her family, let her meet ours." "Really? You do that?" "Of course, she's your sister. She's family." Cole wiped tears from Marla's cheeks. "Besides, Ellie's never seen the ocean. Might be good for her." So they made plans. Saved money. Prepared for a trip that would connect the pieces of Marla's life in a way she'd never thought possible. But first there was work to do. The ranch to maintain, fences to mend, gardens to plant. All the million small tasks that made up a life. Marla threw herself into it all with enthusiasm. She learned to ride, Cole teaching her patiently on gentle smoke. She learned to recognize when animals were sick, how to preserve food for winter, how to read the weather in the clouds and wind. She became competent, then skilled, then essential to the ranch's operation. One afternoon in late May, she was working in the garden when she heard Cole call her name. She looked up to find him standing at the fence, gesturing for her to come see something. "What is it?" she asked, wiping dirt from her hands. "Just come here." She followed him to the north pasture, where Ellie was sitting on the fence rail, watching something intently. When Marla got closer, she saw what had captured the girl's attention. A foal, not Starlight, but one of the other mare's babies, was taking its first wobbly steps, its mother watching proudly. "Isn't it beautiful?" Ellie whispered, her voice full of wonder. "It is," Marla agreed, climbing up to sit beside her. Cole stood behind them, his hands on both their shoulders. The 3 of them sat there in the warm spring sunshine, watching new life find its legs, and Marla felt something settle in her chest. This was it. This was everything. Not perfect. Nothing in life was perfect. There would still be hard days and challenges and moments of grief and fear, but there would also be this, moments of pure joy, of connection, of watching miracles happen in the middle of ordinary life. "I'm glad I'm here," Marla said softly. "Where else would you be?" Ellie asked, leaning against her. "Nowhere, that's the point. There's nowhere else I want to be." Cole squeezed her shoulder. "Good, because we're not letting you leave." "Not ever," Ellie added. Marla laughed, the sound bright and free. "Deal." That night, after Ellie was asleep and the cabin was quiet,
Marla and Cole sat on the porch watching the stars come out. The mountains rose dark against the sky, solid and eternal. "Do you ever think about that first day?" Marla asked. "The wedding?" "Sometimes." "Why?" "I was just thinking about how different everything is now, how different I am." "You're not that different. You're just more yourself."
Marla considered that.
"Maybe, but I feel different, stronger, more sure of my place in the world." "That's because you have a place now. You have people who need you, who choose you." "So do you." "Yeah," Cole smiled. "Took me long enough to accept it." They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the night sounds, owls calling, the distant howl of a coyote, the soft rustle of wind through the trees. "Cole?" Marla said eventually. "Hmm?" "Thank you." "For what?" "For giving me a chance when I was just the desperate girl in the ugly dress. For seeing past what I looked like to who I could be. For building this life with me." Cole turned to look at her, his eyes serious in the starlight. "You don't have to thank me for any of that. If anything, I should be thanking you. You saved me, Marla. You brought light back into this house. You gave me a reason to be more than just the grieving widower on the mountain. You made me want to live again, not just survive." "We saved each other," Marla said, echoing their earlier conversation. "Yeah, we did." He pulled her close, and she rested her head on his shoulder, feeling the steady rise and fall of his breathing. The pendant he'd given her, the mountain peak, pressed against her heart, a reminder of home. "I love you," she said quietly. "I love you too. More than I thought I could love anyone after Sarah. More than I knew I was capable of." "Is that scary?" "Terrifying, but worth it." Cole kissed the top of her head. "You're worth it." They stayed there until the night grew cold, until the stars wheeled overhead and the moon rose full and bright. Then they went inside, checked on Ellie one more time, and went to bed together. As Marla drifted off to sleep in Cole's arms, warm and safe and loved, she thought about the journey that had brought her here. All the pain and fear and desperate choices. All the moments when she'd thought she couldn't go on. She'd survived. More than survived. She'd found a way to thrive. To build something real and lasting from the ashes of what she'd lost. She was Marla Bennett, wife, mother, partner, the unwanted bride who'd become essential, the desperate girl who'd found her strength, the woman who'd learned that sometimes the worst moments led to the best endings. And as sleep finally claimed her, Marla smiled, because she was home. She was loved. She was exactly where she belonged. And that was worth everything.